Hello and welcome, everyone. Happy Saturday night. Hope you're all having a fantastic week so far. Today, we are here for another episode of the podcast Suprise. Today, we'll be covering episodes 3 and 4 of The Witcher Season 2, What Is Lost in Redanian Intelligence. Super excited to be here, getting back into it, getting back into some analysis. We got a monorail of monoliths and Michal Skier, I believe that's how, and I'm Kylefer. And like I said, we have two versions of the podcast Surprise. We have our live YouTube version, which you can check out when we do all of our live stuff, and you can come join us in the comment section in the live chat. And we also have our podcast version, which you can check out on anchor.fm with an awesome playlist of episodes. So yeah, guys, what's going on? How's it going?
Going good. Excited to talk about the first episode that matters.
Hey, Google, make corner ivory.
And Aziz is setting his background to.
I know what you mean by that, Michal.
What could I be talking about?
Someone said on, I don't remember where it was, maybe it was Twitter. I don't know where I saw it, but someone pointed out that Jaskier has not kissed anyone on screen. Noted womanizer Jaskier. It's like, how about that?
And what he talks a big game, but
yeah, it does fit in with his yeah. I like that.
And what exactly do you mean by this is the first episode that matters, Michal?
I'm just saying the only important character in the entire show turns up in episode 4. So that's just what I'm subtly implying.
So yeah, everyone, we're going to be breaking down these episodes here. What are your first impressions of these episodes? We talked about the first two really kind of setting the tone and the atmosphere for the season, and these ones we get some new characters. We get definitely some sorrow, especially in episode 3. Some chains start to move. We get some big conversations with Vilgafortz, and we see some of the stuff we talked about earlier in the podcast with the xenophobia and the elves, and all sorts of complicated scenarios really pop up in these episodes. So I guess Michal, we'll start with you. What were your kind of first impressions of these first 2 episodes?
I really liked them. I thought, the series started well, had like a small hiccup in episode 2, but really kind of found its feet and kept going forward. I thought really strongly. Watching them again, it's interesting. I sort of felt like the first 3 were kind of a group, and then we were kind of moving, because you have like the first episode, and then you have Arrival at Kaer Morhen, and then you have all the fallout of the Esco stuff, and Ciri starts her training in earnest, and then we're kind of moving into another set of episodes with episode 4, and introducing the only important character, Jaskier, and all of Yennefer and Kaer's journey and all of that.
And towards the end of episode 3, we got Vizimir and Redania and all of that, and we start to get into some more kingdoms. And then episode 4, we have someone come in with a bang. But Aziz, we start to kind of, move a little bit away from the past, and we get a nice little flashback of Esco and Geralt, which we're going to talk about, which was heartwarming. But yeah,
that's well said. Yeah, arguably, it's like we go away from the past, the recent past, to the like super ancient past instead, and towards the future. So instead of like within the last few years or last decade, it's like 1,000 years ago is what becomes a little more prominent. I guess that really started right at the beginning of the season, but it's that's obviously an ongoing thing where these things are being explored. Half the characters don't even know what's going on yet. Obviously, it's only Yennefer and her squad, using that term loosely, that are dealing with the Deathless Mother. But that starts to spread, right? The monsters are coming for Ciri, and they're starting to try to figure that out. And like, why are they coming for her? Why are monsters attacking Kaer Morhen? That's the one place monsters should avoid. It's like that's the place that has the only people that are built to kill you, or
Now we're safe here, all right. That's it's a big butt.
Right? Isn't it funny? Geralt says, "You're safe here," and then no, actually, you're probably not, and everyone else is less safe because you're there too. Because you're kind of a wanted figure by some pretty bad people, and bad non-people too.
So let's kind of dive into it. Kaer Morhen, we have an episode image always with the credits before we start off with the episode, and the swallow.
The swallow, yeah.
Zirael.
Yeah, I really appreciate Ciri's intensity, right? She's like, this is finally, here's like a path, the path, I pun intended, that she can achieve what she's been lacking, which is she's really frustrated by her prior helplessness. She wanted to help. I mean, she wanted to participate in the stopping of her home being destroyed. She didn't want to be a victim only. She didn't want to just run away. And she's worried about anything like that happening again. And that's something I think, despite Ciri being a character whose life and upbringing and abilities are not relatable, this is the like wanting to take care of people around you, not wanting to be helpless, not wanting other people to do that for you. That's all very relatable. And so I appreciate that, like this combination of like, I have no idea what it's like to have these insane powers, but I do know what it's like to, feel a little helpless or feel like vulnerable or feel like you're not pulling your weight or what have you.
It's related to her sense of loss, right? Like she lost her parents and then she loses Calanthe, and now she's in this situation where she's the only female like Kaer Morhen. That's gotta, she's thrown into this situation with a bunch of like guys, alpha males. You know what I mean? We're talking monster hunters here.
Who don't seem to bathe. Like, let's just be real. I don't think they bathe.
Yeah, they started to rub off on her, and Triss is like, "Well, don't go down that path. Like, just because you're around a bunch of men doesn't mean you should stop bathing."
Well, there's definitely a realization there from Ciri that she starts to realize like this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. And she's kind of like, oh, okay, well, this idealism that she has, she's kind of thrown in with the wolves. No pun intended.
But I love how much she embraces it. She's like, yeah, yes, I want to do this. She's like, you see Geralt's like, time to take a break, and she's like, I can do it. And
he says something that I think a lot of people can relate to, which is like hunger is like a bad teacher or something like that. Like, you're just gonna keep messing up if you keep practicing when you're hungry, which I know I have definitely done, and it's totally true. So like whatever it is,
isn't that how the term hangry came about? You're hungry and angry, so you should angry. That's how the word got sandwiched together. No pun intended. Again,
there's a certain other show that also has a big protect small magic pairing that has had a similar line along these this concept, which was if you could just keep trying over and over without reconsidering what's going wrong, it's going to yield the same results. You can't just keep trying. You have to like think about what you're doing and stop and
learn from failure.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just all the time. Yeah.
Failure is supposed to be a motivator. You're not supposed to commit the same mistakes over and over and over. But obviously her mind isn't in. We see her obviously later in the season. She's in a better mind frame because she's, also not just practicing her physical skills, but also her mental mindset. And that's something that she's got to work on. But she's definitely compromised in a lot of ways, and she doesn't know why. And
she's also being hazed. Like, I don't think we have to like put it gently that like particularly Lambert is being a total dick to her unnecessarily. And like, it's one thing to kind of, encourage her, or, like, I'm not saying they have to make the obstacle course easy for her or anything like that. Like, that's, you want to try and be a Witcher, you got to do Witcher things, but he's definitely making it harder with his like negging of her and his,
It feels personal and somewhat territorial because they're like, oh, this princess is in our present. Like, she must be looking down. Like, like this kind of sense of being looked down upon. Like, this is our place. Like, how dare she be here? Like, Geralt is bringing this person here without our consent type of deal, right? And then Geralt's like, listen, this person is really important. And then Lambert's like, well, he's like, I'm important too, I'm kind of a
Funnily enough, Lambert wasn't quite as territorial about all the sex workers that Esco brought in.
Yeah, right? Isn't that funny?
They were welcome for some reason.
Yeah, there's definitely some attitude that comes from, I think, like class. I mean, you're right. It's a prince, like they're accusing her of being a princess, but then over not too long, thankfully, Lambert kind of gets respect for her. For one thing, he respects that she keeps trying, that she gets hurt and just gets right back up and tries again, which is very respectable. Second of all, they have a lot in common despite the appearances, right? Like at first, okay, you were a princess, I was probably an orphan, because most of the Witchers are probably orphans, right? If not actual orphans, then effectively orphans, right? But then that comes out like, well, yeah, she's an orphan too. She lost her family too. Sure, it was a rich family, but it's not like she has that anymore. It's not like she has all that wealth, right? Like, it's gone. So she's pretty much, she lost more than you, arguably, right? Like, that's a way to frame it. So yeah, I like this because they didn't spend too much time on the Lambert being a jerk, but it was very effective because it really got a rise out of her. Ciri kind of, like you said, Michal, it was more than just hazing. It was beyond that. But she took it like it was hazing and responded to it like sort of how like a good version of hazing would look.
Like he was trying to get her to stop. And yeah, she did.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, there's the hazing that is to make you tougher, and there's the hazing that makes you go away. And it was definitely of the hazing to make you go away. And then it became the hazing to make you tougher as Lambert's like, oh, actually, you're pretty cool. I kind of like you, actually. Never mind that stuff before. You're tough. Everybody come look. They're
not really an essential relation because they both definitely come from two different places. Like we're talking about this kind of like class level thing here, and Vesemir kind of had a little talk with Ciri, like, listen, like, I came from thing. I was a Witcher. I was a little boy once too, and I came from and it's a good thing that both Geralt and Vesemir have some wisdom to give Ciri, and they kind of know the kind of run around of what's happening there at Kaer Morhen. And I think Vesemir and Geralt are both perceptive of how other Witchers can possibly treat someone like Ciri, and I think they're very observant of that. That's one thing that I also noticed kind of while all those kind of personalities are first clashing at Kaer Morhen.
Yeah,
well, of course they're mad. Oh, go ahead.
Well, just it struck me that like as against Lambert as I am in his approach, like we do meet a lot more royalty in this episode, and then we spend more time with the King of Redania, and like they're just gross, horrible people who like are literally using everyone else for their own like petty like advancement and whatever, and they're bad people. So I don't, I think that gives a tiny bit more context, I guess, to to Lambert's perspective on Ciri, if like this is the royalty that he's met and what he's had to deal with, and she's kind of the same thing as like a baby monster.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Because that's what I was gonna say. He's their there's the princess aspect, but then there's this like they're blaming her for Esco and blaming for her for these other things, which also comes around. They also come around on that because it's it's not her fault, right? But she didn't ask for this. It wasn't her choices that led to this. So and they of course they really Lambert straight up accuses Geralt more so than Ciri to her face about it. And Geralt doesn't really defend himself. He's like, yeah, he kind of is blaming himself. He does feel guilty about it, about what happened to Eskel. And Cohen just kind of tells him to stop, like half-heartedly. He's like, leave off, man. They're all hurting over it. So it's really tough.
You made a really good point, though, Michal, which ties into one of the biggest things in the series, in that everybody wants Ciri, and there's very, very few people who are willing to step up and protect Ciri for what she actually is, and that's a human being first and foremost. You know what I mean? And I think that that's something that I don't want to spoil too much because we get more into it. We talk more about the kind of power of these royals and who we see in the final episode of the season. So we'll talk more about this theme, I think. But yeah, that was a really great point too, I think, and that there's a lot of things to come as far as like people abusing their power and showing how humans can be the worst monsters. One of the biggest themes of the series.
Is that what the show's about?
We have the Esco flashback in this one that we briefly touched on it last time because it obviously attaches to everything. It's so related to this, but more specifically, there's that sad line. Then they're working really hard and training, and it's very much an echo of how hard Ciri's working, right? So there's a lot of mirroring or parallels in a lot of these episodes. It's something that I think they did a very good job of. And he says, he's like, then you can hang what's left of me on the medallion tree, and I'm like, oh, dang it. And there's the bumblebee anecdote, which none of us could remember when that bumblebee anecdote happened. Kyle, you were like, is it something more? And I was like, I think it's in Blood of Elves. And I looked it up. It's like, no, it's actually in The Last Wish. And we're like, really? Yeah, it was way back then. Yeah, it's in Last Wish. I'm like, really? But yeah, I looked it up and that's where it is. So
Well, it was one off, so it wasn't that bad.
yeah,
But,
you're closer to me.
before we move forward, speaking of medallions, Morhen is tossing a coin to, she says, at least some of my 3 favorite YouTubers out there. Of course, Morhen is one of our biggest supporters, and we really, really appreciate you. She's definitely not a monster. She's a queen. A queen of the continent, or shall we say Kaer Morha?
Oh, Kaer Morha. Oh,
as we
really
said in the
good.
last episode, Kaer Morha, because she's caring. Lol. But thank you so much, Morha. Yeah, but kind of delving back more into this, a lot of really great themes are starting to bubble in this episode that start to kind of, there's a lot of really great emotional tendrils this episode. It's because, when we obviously lose Esco and we don't really get to know him that much, but, when you lose a Witcher and there's not that many left, it definitely feels like kind of the end of an era almost. You know what I mean? It's like, whoa.
Good use of the word tendrils there with the
yeah.
fleshy arms or whatever.
I'm making a lot of puns today. I don't know why. It's really
you're on. It's a Saturday for puns. Yes, it is February 5th as we record this.
So let's
sorry, just about the flashback. Like it really, it's very sad. It sucks. Like it's very upsetting, I found, to watch that, especially watching it again and knowing that we weren't even going to get any more flashbacks who this guy was, but just this moment of real brotherhood. And it was also interesting to me that Geralt is remembering that particular conversation, because he says that it's his life, it's the life mission of all Witchers to hunt monsters, and that's it. And and our life's mission will never be fulfilled, because then there won't be any more monsters. And we talk about the paradox of being a Witcher. But the ironic thing is that he actually has his real destiny, his real life's mission now, which is protecting Ciri. And it's interesting to me that that's the memory that comes to mind when he's kind of at this crossroads of choosing a different path somewhat.
One thing that's super interesting, without spoiling too much going forward either, is that we obviously see later on in the season Geralt is very upset because Ciri makes a pretty big choice to follow Vesemir, right? And it's just like Ciri makes that big decision, but she doesn't really know what she's getting into. And I think Geralt realizes hey, there's more to life for her. There's something more. That's why he tells her that in the first episode. You're much more than just this. And I think and he's letting her do her own thing, but I think he's also trying to not be too forward with it, because he understands that she doesn't truly know him. She's just trying to push her forward a little bit without doing it too much.
Yeah, when she says I'm your destiny, he's like, well, actually, really, it should probably be framed the other way around.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's one of the things about this season is because we don't have the incident in the books where Geralt and Ciri meet and have an adventure together kind of before they have established each other's identities. That kind of goes a long way toward building the emotion into the destiny, right? And this is it's almost like an arranged marriage in a kind of way of you're into the idea, and you have the feelings for the person that I guess the structure of destiny says you're supposed to have, but there's a lot missing. There are a whole bunch of gaps in their connections to each other, their understandings of each other, the way they can interact comfortably, because there is this, I guess, I do feel there's parts of it where Geralt should be putting his arm around her and daughter and whatever, but they're not there yet. So
Right.
it's
that
really
it's that learning to love is true. It's just like in arranged marriages, like some people don't even see someone else's face before they get married. It's like the idea of love that traditionally that we all go through is like we make our own choices for that, and that's kind of a super important thing, right? Like you should be choosing who you love. I mean, I love Michal even though she hates Nivellen. Right? I've learned to love that going forward. But yeah, it is kind of that, and I think Geralt does realize that, and he's growing himself, right? Like he's still learning a lot too. Like he's never been a father before. He even told Yennefer that it would be a terrible idea for them to be parents.
Yeah.
So it's like this is a pretty big step for Geralt too, if you think about it.
Yeah, I think also if we move on to the funeral, that has a lot of it's really good, right? It's really well done, and it's emotional, and the leaving him for the wolves is kind of interesting. That's a nice touch, I thought. Something that isn't in the books as far as I can recall anyway, and I thought that was neat. And I'm interested in Vesemir's role as like a researcher, like his, that wasn't really a part of the books either, as him, kind of being a magical detective of sorts, and with Triss working with him and stuff. That stuff was pretty neat. I like that aspect of it. There's parts of that plot line that I wasn't super fond of, but just the general idea overall, I liked it. And this having him do that, I thought was fun because I like the research. We love talking about lore on this show, and that added a bit to that sphere of things. There's a great line. Yeah, there's a great line of them talking about like how this all happened and what these monsters are coming from, and it's so difficult to figure out. And he goes, maybe another conjunction will come along and change it all again. It's like, oh, well, that's an interesting thought.
Careful what you wish for.
That is straight foreshadowing, my friends.
Yeah,
it is cool though, because it gets other characters involved, and I've talked a little bit about this, and we'll talk more about the Wild Hunt as the season goes on. But I think that this Wild Hunt stuff and the conjunction of sphere stuff, this whole mythology element, is really going to involve more characters than it did in the books, like the Vesemirs, the Istrids, and other characters, because I think we're going to have this grand conjunction, this huge battle at some point. I think it's obviously adaptations are a little bit different, and I don't always like to compare things to Game of Thrones, but I think it will be beneficial because some of the book characters that we love will get some more screen time, and I think it will make for more compelling TV. I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it allows more people to be involved in the process because there are
world-changing events.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty well done too. That the way it was set up with her being in the training and just little bits of she's toughing it out and being real boss about it and not giving up. That leads to some of the elder bloods being spilled on the ground there, which becomes a plot point as part of Vesemir's
the Feynwood,
of his investigations, and then where that leads, which is pretty cool. I thought that was a nice touch as well because it fits in really well with what's already happening. You just have well, that is supposed to be where elder blood, where that grows. That's established. It's just they just expanded on it. The show is like, well, let's have it grow a little more often under the same or similar circumstances, and to have it a little more visual, and to have that, because that makes sense to have it be more visual, especially because they changed some of that early part of Blood of Elves where they find the Feynwood in the forest, and Geralt explains to Ciri some of that stuff, which I think that caravan scene is still going to happen because we meet the dwarves at the end of the season, but it just probably won't have the flowers in it. So
it's also symbolic too. Flowers growing out of snow. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Speaking of more Game of Thrones stuff, blue in the snow, right? Yeah. That's not, of course, not unique to Game of Thrones, but it does make you think of that, right? I mean, me too. Yeah.
and just on the character level, like, again, we've talked a lot about Eskel and that situation, but like the way Vesemir reacts is so genuinely sad. And like he has this quote about how, like, he's doing all these experiments, and he like can't rest, and he can't let Eskel rest, and it's like he says, I know you think I'm mad, but I need to know what happened. If it were your child, you would be going crazy to figure it out, what you missed, what you could have done differently. And that is just like such a realistic thing for a parent to just like not, like I've heard stories of like, parents of soldiers in World War I who like, what happened to their son. I don't know. He was slaughtered in a mass grave in some like unnamed push of in some field in France somewhere, and like going to crazy lengths to find out even just how they died, and
it's as with Geralt becoming a father figure, it's something for them to bond over. It's something that he maybe wouldn't have understood as much as he does now. And like even as recently as 2 years ago, he would have been sad still. It's still Eskel's still his friend, but it wouldn't have hit him as deep what Vesemir's saying here about taking care of someone and wanting to know what happened. So it kind of maybe even motivates Geralt even more. Like, I really don't want to find myself in this spot. I don't want to be weeping over a child body, so
if Geralt wasn't there, Vesemir would be in a much worse spot. Geralt is a big crutch for Vesemir in that moment. I feel like he's not only giving him an emotional support, but he's also there for like giving his wisdom too. Like it is ceremonial to have the wolf, the symbol of their school, the symbol that they wear on their Witcher medallion until death. Obviously eat Eskel and take them. They go back into the wild, but I think it's really, really important for Geralt to be there, offering emotional support to Vesemir. Witchers aren't supposed to feel emotion, but clearly this is a situation where
forget it. I mean, please, these
clearly
people are more emotional than a girls' high school.
Lambert. Lambert. Yeah, it's true. Right.
What do y'all think of this moment where Geralt finds the garment in the ceiling? I thought it was kind of puzzling, interesting, but odd.
What do you think, Michal?
Yeah, I thought that was actually staged weirdly. It felt very dramatic. Like he sees this thing hidden in the wall, and it's like deep in there, and I'm like, oh my god, is it like a piece of Eskel or something that's like trying to grow towards Ciri or something? And it's just this like scarf or a piece of Cintra cloth, and like I read it as the second time as an indication that Geralt is starting to understand why Ciri is so hell-bent on training and hurting herself and being illogical in her pursuit of, I guess, physical strength. But I still think it was maybe framed a little bit more dramatically than it needed to be.
Yeah, I didn't quite get it. I like your explanation, but it's still kind of like,
I find it interesting because I think Geralt sees. I mean, it represents Cintra, right? And Ciri loses her home, she loses her family, she loses Mousak, she loses nearly everything. And then, by the end of this season, he's like, well, we're not even safe in my home. We can't stay here. So it's this idea of home. And I think Geralt's, trying to understand Ciri a little bit in that moment. He's like, she's holding on to the past. You know what I mean? I think he recognizes that she's trying to move forward, but in that moment, he realizes it's going to be a lot more difficult for her than she realizes. It's like one of those other things. It's like, she's going to really hold on to the past for a while, I think. Is kind of
one other thing that kind of I was thinking about, I'm not sure if this is what they had going for them, but there's the pull, right? Like she's being pulled. She feels the pull towards the forest. She dreams of the Leshy pulling on her, grabbing her. And, this thing is wrapped up in some branches. So it kind of felt like maybe that was what they were going for as part of it. Now, that's not the whole thing. But again, I'm not sure. Putinesca 621 in the chat had a good point here. For once, it's also an opportunity for us to compare to something besides Game of Thrones. It says Vulcans suppress their emotions. They don't actually not have emotions. It's kind of a thing in Star Trek where they said they don't have emotion, but they don't actually not have emotions. They just
suppress them.
They say suppress them, which is similar to what Witchers do.
I don't know though. I feel like this is maybe like it's kind of a selling point.
It's not really as true as they say, huh?
Yeah, people always say this about Witchers, but the only Witcher we hear actually say it is Geralt, when he's always being like, I don't have any feelings, So it's like, I don't know. I feel like,
you're right. We don't really see the cold whole emotionless Witcher, really. We haven't seen a single example of that, really, have we? We've only seen it for like stretches. Like Geralt that has been that way for a little while at a time, but not very long on screen, given how much of it is associated with Ciri. There's not that much time where he's alone, and even when he's with like Renfrey, like there's plenty of emotion. Like he was super emotional in that, that's the first episode of the show. So.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's always on the verge of tears. Like, let's get real. So, I mean,
the one way we can also look at the Cintra and the garment and the roots is that Ciri's roots are in Cintra. We know that we're going to be returning there at some point.
Yeah.
Nilfgaard is in Cintra. They're occupying Cintra. The roots getting the Leshy's tendrils getting closer and closer to Ciri. Monsters infringing upon that. So I think it represents a lot of things, even though it's a small thing. You know what I mean? It's like
the roots. That's a good call. I like that. Good call. Yeah.
Well, I do think it represents Ciri's, her kind of emotional tie to Cintra in some sort of way.
Yeah, I mean, and there's also, I think, the idea of like the past holding on to Ciri, not just Ciri holding on to the past. Like it which will actually take on a very, I mean, we're not even talking about Ciri's personal past in that sense. Like we're
talking about someone else grasping onto the
cosmic
idea.
Past is holding on to Ciri in a very significant way.
And the idea of someone else seeking her out with her roots, and it has a much bigger meaning for sure, I think.
Yeah, and that's something that is maybe confusing to people and can be maybe even slightly off-putting if you're bored of the whole like, why doesn't the monster kill her trope? It's like it's got her right there. Like it's pausing for some unknown reason, which is just a recurring feature of so many movies and shows. But in this case, it's not trying to kill her. It was trying to capture her or whatever. Like the myriapod thing, like had her cornered. It was just kind of staring at her, like it was kind of. Then it reached for her with its like hand thing instead of trying to stab her, which is similar to the Leshy just grabbing her. Right? They were trying to take her. They weren't trying to kill her or whatever. So that makes a lot more sense when. That's clear, and maybe the first time it isn't super clear, but second time through is like, yeah, well, that's what's happening here. Okay, yeah, they didn't, because even book readers don't necessarily know that because this stuff isn't in the book, so you're like, wait, what is going on here? So second time through it's like, I see. It's not that trope. It's they're trying to capture her. They don't want to kill her. That's why they're hesitating, because they're not trying to kill her. They're perfectly fine to kill the Witchers, but not Ciri, not the one with the Elder Blood.
Just a quick shout out to all the awesome people in chat. Anthony, Rob, and we see Kate Bertinsky. We see Zanapelle. I hope I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Morally, I see some of our Gregors Lewandowski, one of our European friends, Putineska and Liat. Thank you everyone for joining us and hanging out with us on Saturday night podcasting, speaking the Witcher with us.
Well, one thing I will say, I love that it's a myriapod, because that's a reflection of the first monster that Ciri and Geralt fight together in the Sword of Destiny story, right?
When she's Red Riding Hood,
yeah. Yeah. So, and I love that because the snake imagery actually becomes very important for Ciri going forward. So.
Yeah.
It's crazy that the Queen Leshy just gets absolutely wrecked.
Yeah, that was
we're like, okay, the Leshy is like an end boss monster and just wrecked like a bunch of Witchers, and then this myriapod just cuts it in half. It's like, oh,
that was extremely surprising, right? Like, look at that thing; it's so majestic and dangerous and powerful, and then just whoa, it gets cut in half. And it's also funny because it's not actually a plot hole, but they say the only way to kill a Leshy is to stab fire into its heart. Now, presumably, that's not actually the only way to kill it. It's just the only way a human can do it. Because if they had the option to tear it in half, they might have done that. But like, apparently tearing it in half works too. But we never had the means to do that.
It's really funny. As a Witcher 3 player, I've ventured off into areas where I wasn't supposed to venture off to many times. And a Leshy is usually the one with a red skull and caution sign above it. So I've ventured into areas that have been killed by Leshy many a time myself.
I feel like maybe it's not dead, it's just like dismembered, and like I think you have to do that to kill it. I mean, Eskel did take its arm off, so like
Yeah,
Yeah.
it clearly can be injured.
It just like fell over. I don't know. I thought it was kind of impressive, to be fucking honest. I liked it.
It just ripped it. I was like, it was so surprising. Like that was not expected at all.
I knew
Even Geralt
I
was
knew
like,
you were
"What
gonna
the
react that
hell?"
way because me and Michal watched the season first. I'm like, what is Aziz gonna think of this shit? He's gonna like,
Just being torn in half. Like you don't
Yeah.
expect something that big to be cut in half.
It was a little bit like watching like The Meg or something, and it's like, there's a bigger shark.
That thing was creepy. That myriapod thing. That was so like, it had the body of a centipede thing with fewer legs, but a lot of legs, and
Weird
that
like
face
face.
though. Yeah, that face was weird.
It was almost like humanoid. It was weird.
Yeah, it really communicated how strange this thing was by having it be so oddly looking and
It was
everything.
mutated and made it feel unnatural, like an unnatural monster from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Shall we jump into the Aretusa stuff? We got lots of really great political moments. We got lots of great kind of stuff that's diving into lore and some of this stuff that really makes the Witcher books for me some of my favorite books. So let's dive into it. Where shall we start with the Aretusa stuff?
Well, it starts with Tisea and
Yeah.
that awesome scene. She's making the list of the people who died, and it carries over the same confusion that's in the books, but in a different way. Like instead of Geralt wondering who the 13th name is, and instead of Triss being mistakenly thought dead, it's Yennefer that's mistakenly thought dead. So it's a similar idea, modified and displayed differently, but it's still very effective, right? Like it is a change that maintained what made that good in the books, I think. And I agree with you, Kyle. There's a lot of really good discussions, a lot of good debates, a lot of philosophizing. And
say that 5 times fast.
No, I won't. But yeah, I really thought, this was strong. Like, I thought the Kaer Morhen stuff was very good in this episode, but arguably this stuff is even stronger, which it wasn't early on. Like the Yennefer stuff early on, I thought most people thought it was weaker than some of the other stuff. But here's where it picks up a lot of steam, and I think gets a lot more interesting, which we sort of said would happen, right? Once it gets more of the politics involved is when it gets more interesting, and you have all these different, really meaningful aspects to it with the fate of races and cultures and nations are hanging in the balance.
Well, we kind of see some really interesting arguments going on. We have the science versus religion kind of thing happening, right? And then we see these different power structures. We obviously see men versus women, the power structure of the male mages and the sorceresses kind of going on too. And I really, really think that's an interesting element because there is some magical things obviously happening, but then we also see the race thing come up again with Stragsy and stuff too. So there's a lot of really, really strong kind of topics here. And yeah, I guess we should just kind of dive into it. Istrid claims, he says he found something, right? And then people were like, probably not. Like people are,
And then he lies
there because we didn't want to deal with you, dude.
And then he lies. He's like, "Yeah, no, I'm neutral. I didn't know. I was too busy on my work." And then he tells Yennefer later, he's like, "Actually, I lied. I totally saw what they were doing."
we see kind of the power gaming here, where maybe if it wasn't Istrid and someone like Stragabor or Vilgafortz saying this, they might have had a different reaction.
Yeah, that's true. Because like Stragabor and Vilgafortz are obviously up to no good, but what's interesting about Stragabor is that he makes a few good points despite being, racist and evil. He says a few things that are like, actually, that's kind of true, but you don't want to agree with him because he's Stragabor, but it's still like you kind of acknowledge one or two of these things. Like he's got this huge prejudice against the elves, but here we see the elves really are pretty murderous and wanting to kill all these humans, not the specific ones he's talking about, but like meanwhile Francesca is on this mission to kill like all these people. So yeah, he's not entirely wrong. It's one of those, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. They really kind of are after you. it's a little too bad that there was a really good deleted scene. I encourage y'all to watch. Maybe we could put this in the chat as well. It's a 2-minute scene with.
I'll copy and paste it right now.
Yeah, Vilgafortz and Stragabor, and the reason it's relevant here is that Vilgafortz accuses Stragabor of rhetoric. He's like, even you can't be stupid enough to believe your own rhetoric that her elven blood is a threat to us. This is where the racism is coming into it, because it's like Stragabor has gone from the elves are after us, which is true, to anyone with elven blood is tainted and a threat to us, which is ridiculous.
And will literally end the world.
Yeah, that's just going way too far. And so Vilgafort's like, look, do you actually believe your own nonsense here? We all think you're just talking, but you're starting to think that you actually believe yourself here. And he's like, and he does kind of back down a little bit. But Stragabor is also classist towards Vilgafortz, who says, oh, looks so climbed out of the gutter, did you? Talking down to him and all this stuff. And Vilgafortz is like, just kind of rolls his eyes. He's like, what does that have to do with anything, man? Come on. Like, I'm where I'm at because I earned it. Like, what is where I came from matter at all? Arguably, it makes me better because it shows I can rise for, I can pull myself out of that start. I didn't have the head start you had, and I still got this far. So, but the other really interesting thing in this scene is Stragabor, while arguing for Yennefer's elven blood being a problem, it's not a very good argument. He does make one really interesting point, which is that, well, how come Yennefer wasn't destroyed by using fire magic? It's like, well, huh? It's like, well, how come she survived that if she's not unnatural, huh? And it doesn't prove his point, but it is a good question. Like, it's like, well, yeah, what happened? What's the deal with that fire magic, bro? Like, why is she? Of course, we know she lost her powers, and maybe we have different theories as to why that happened, but she did lose her powers, and fire magic is important. This whole aspect is a very important plot line. So yeah, so that was a lot, and this is like a 2-minute deleted scene, so you can see why I thought it was kind of important, because that's all really important things right there.
Speaking of important, Michal, Tissaia leverages Vilgi here as Vilgi here. Let's get into Vilgi. We always say Stragsy. Vilgafortz's hunch to save the continent, and his hunches about the Nilfgaardian forces.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much like you can see the new guard positioning themselves against the old guard, and it is very interesting that, like, I don't think there's any real suggestion of this in the books that Tissaia and Vilgafortz are like a couple, because it takes someone who we have, or at least I like very much, in Tissaia, and puts her on the same team as Vilgafortz, who I don't think it's a spoiler to say she could do better.
Yeah, I guess so.
But it's like it's very interesting how, like, Vilgafortz is very good at, like, saying exactly what needs to be said in one particular moment, and because he's against Stragabor, there's a certain amount of, like, satisfaction to that, but you also know that it's going to come back to, like, bite everyone in the ass. And then, like, it's so frustrating, like the scene where, I mean, I love Yennefer and Tissaia's reunion. I think it's really beautiful, and, like, has very much a, like, almost kind of vibes of Geralt and Ciri meeting at the end of season 1. But, like, she's like, okay, so can you just, like, let my boyfriend take the credit? And I'm like, okay, huge red flag right there, multiple flags. Like, the second you said that, you should have been like, actually, I just heard it coming out of my mouth and there's a problem here. But, like, she doesn't. She just kind of, like, is going along with this idea, and it's
She's
interesting.
Bought in. She's fooled. Yeah.
Yeah. She
Vilgafortz is. I had a thought that he's really good at, like, reading the room and then taking charge of what the room wants, and that's how he positions. That's how he gets to be in charge. Like, he just takes everyone's anger and takes the lead, and he's like I'm the tip of the spear on what we're most importantly trying to do here. And that's where you get this, yeah, let's let Vilgafortz take the lead. It's important right now to let him get the glory so he can take, get this. Oh, and Yennefer figures it out right away. It's like, oh, you two are making a play to take over, aren't you? I love how quick she is.
But
she's so cynical. She always sees through these things. It's like not just cynical, it's realistic. Yeah.
But I think, he's a true politician. Yennefer
Yes.
realizes that. And a true politician, someone like Vilgafortz, will continue to make those kinds of plays, and they will continue to gain power at any means necessary. It's about them staying in power and gaining power, and that's the problem with Vilgafortz. You can see him kind of swell with that. You see Tissaia giving him confidence, and you see the confidence that he's getting, and it's starting to create a negative thing. It's not.
Well, they people like that also, like, they know how to use the right powerful people. So Tissaia obviously is not. It's hard. I mean, obviously she and Stragabor are not the same faction, but it's hard to tell exactly how high up she is. I assume she's pretty high up, but like Vilgafortz attaching his wagon to her horse, is eventually like that's a really smart move. And inveigling himself to the point where she is like, you know what, let's let him take credit for the stuff that actually I encouraged you to do. Like her speech to Yennefer before the fire magic's like, let go, like use all your power, like, stop being restrained and whatever. And now it's like, let's just be restrained and pretend that
yeah, totally. Because like he's not part of being a really good politician. Stragabor isn't a good politician. Stragabor is like, I don't know, he's a gadfly or a yeller.
He's less logical. He's more emotional. You can tell.
He is more. Yeah, he's more dogmatic and paranoid. And whereas Vilgafortz is a lot more cool and collected, and like I said, reads the room really well. I think, and that's why he is wary of Yennefer, and why he won't go after her openly, and why he will talk to Stragabor certain ways in private, but in public he speaks differently, because Yennefer is the savior. Like everybody recognizes that. So Stragabor going after her for his racism when she's the savior of the realm, is just it's bad politics, right? You don't go after a hero, right? And Vilgafortz realizes that, and he doesn't actually see her as a hero. He sees her as an obstacle because he wants to be, he's trying to take over, but he has to play the game and treat her like a hero because that's what everybody else sees her as. So you see these two opposite approaches where Vilgafortz, like you said, is playing the politics. He's playing all the angles once. He's not pissing anybody off except for the guy that everyone's pissing off, and that's the guy that he focuses on because everyone's mad at Stragabor, so he takes the lead in pushing back against Stragabor. And but sort of letting Tissaia be the even more aggressive one because Vilgafortz is trying to be the leader, in the middle, and listen to everything. And he's just playing those roles really, really smartly and cynically and effectively.
I liken Vilgafortz more to like a Littlefinger, and Stragabor more to like a Ramsay.
I feel like Stragabor used to be a Vilgafortz, but he's so much the old guard, and I think that I'm just realizing now that him talking about we'll get there, but like the story that he tells of Falca when he was there is maybe part and parcel of like representing just how old the old guard is. It is very, very long standing, and like the new guard does not even have to be that new for it to be a considerable change.
I kind of do agree with Stragabor in a way too, that he's worried that some of this new guard is moving very quickly, and like you can see Vilgafortz like, like I think Stragabor does recognize that, but obviously Stragabor is not a good person, so it's like you don't want to kind of align yourself with those kind of things. But Vilgafortz is very intelligent because you were talking kind of about rank a little bit, Michal. Tissaia, she's obviously high ranking, but she's still probably like 4th or 5th. Like there's still probably like 4 or 5 males that rank above her. But Vilgafortz, if he ties himself to Tissaia, he's probably higher ranking than her because he's a male. Like he's being very intelligent because he knows she's the highest ranking sorceress, and he can kind of, it's a really interesting play that he's making.
Yeah. It's funny too because he's wary of Yennefer, and he should be wary of Vilgafortz. That's the one that's really the problem here.
Well, the thing is Yennefer has the best one of the best bullshit radars on the continent. She can sniff that shit out. You know what I'm saying?
She has no patience for politics, but understands it really well. Like she sussed out all the same things Vilgafortz did, in just as quickly, but she has a much different want out of it. She doesn't want to take over. She doesn't care about that. She has much different goals, which is part of why Vilgafortz is like, okay, well, maybe you're not a threat to me after all. Because when she's like, yeah, I don't care, and he senses that her power is gone or something like that, he's like, oh, well, I'm just going to casually forget about you then, because I was worried about you, but now looks like you're not a threat, especially with to say on my side, you know.
The thing about Yennefer, though, is she's not necessarily dangerous because she is like powerful. I mean, that's definitely part of it, and that's what mages and Thanet respond to. But she's dangerous because she's not a politician. She's like an anti-politician.
Yes.
She comes in there like an absolute wrecking ball. And if she had stayed, I mean, like we see how she leaves. You know, like
even more of a wrecking ball. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like she literally.
Axe.
Yeah, she wants to tear down structures, and like the structure of Thanet, she has personal, beef with. I don't even know if that's like something she's conscious of at the time, but like the way like she makes her entrance into that meeting, where it's just like the game board has been toppled over, like all the pieces you guys are putting in place don't matter anymore because Yennefer is here, and she's just gonna kick the pieces everywhere.
You don't even get to keep your list of names. You have to throw that away. Even that has to be tossed.
Look at what they tried to force.
And she jokes about this. She's like, I just finished writing that, you know. So you walk in today, you know.
5 minutes.
And look at what they try to force her to do at the end of the episode. She doesn't comply. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's like we see more of kind of this politics go on. And obviously Kaer is, someone of a more grayer character, which we get to kind of know over the next couple episodes, which I'll have to say Kaer is one of my top 3 or 4 favorite characters in the books.
It's neat, this sort of karmic treatment of one prisoner gets treated a certain way, then gets treated a certain way, then they get treated a certain way. Like, it's neat to hear, like, if we compare another example of Stragabor's hypocrisy as a way to segue into this other topic, we have when Stragabor captures Yennefer, he takes her captive and starts reading her mind, and then he's like, oh, I was just trying to protect the school. I'm trying to protect our organization. And it's like the second time in this episode he says something like that, because in the class with Istrid, when Istrid walks in on his class and argues with him, he's like, I've always tried to protect our institutions, to protect you. And he's looking at the students, and Istrid gives him the really, dude, look. He gives him like the, are you kidding me, dude? He's like, me, as you're sitting here saying we can't let elven blood on our council, like, are you really protecting us by saying things like that? Your version of protecting us involves your very virulent strain of racism.
Yeah, in my notes was basically like, I wrote, honestly, fucking Stragabor, and I feel like that's what Istrid is thinking.
Yeah, right. He is, but on the other hand, like, Istrid's kind of being dishonest too. He's obviously not as bad as Stragabor, but it's funny how many of these arguments are between total hypocrites. They're both like accusing each other of hypocrisy, and they're both right.
Politics.
Like, yeah, totally. Like, Stragabor calls Falca, quote, mutt of a girl who cried death to kings when Vridank spurned his elven mother, which is like, whoa, that is quite an interpretation of Falca. On the other hand,
citation needed.
Yeah, citation needed. On the other hand,
calls her a mutt. That's pretty bad.
It's really hard to argue with him, even though he's clearly wrong about some of the stuff, because unlike most of the people arguing with him, he was there, right? He was actually there. Apparently he lost his hands, which is like, whoa, how do you even cast spells like that? But ignoring that part, he says, yeah, I was there when Falca destroyed Mirtha and all the mages in it. So he's seen his like mages get slaughtered. He's seen like a mini genocide of mages. So maybe there's 1 or 2% of trauma in there that is leading some of this. Like, obviously we don't excuse anything he's done, but that would mess you up living through that. It would maybe make you paranoid about something like that happening again. So
I think the problem with Stragabor is the problem with all like political extremists, which is that they can't isolate. They identify maybe something that could be a real problem, but they don't isolate it to the actual source of the problem. They then say that everyone who's like this is the problem.
Everyone
like,
with any elven blood,
let's kill anyone who is around that also. And like,
Yeah.
It goes back to his, his destruction of all the girls who were born during the eclipse or whatever. It's like, it can't possibly be that like, no, this is probably fine. And you're just like seeing coincidences where there aren't any. But it's like driven by this idea that like, if I see something wrong in a girl, like, or a girl who potentially might threaten to destroy some institution, which is, it's really the way to strike War's heart. It's like, yeah, like, so that's how you get that kind of killing spree, really.
Yeah, you're right, and that's what leads to that's like at the heart of a lot of genocides, or at the heart of lesser things where a minority is blamed for something that doesn't necessarily result in everybody being killed. But just, like blaming one, it doesn't even have to be a minority. It can be just blaming a group for something that if you have any association with this group, you must be part of the problem, which is totally ridiculous, right? Like there's no nuance to that at all. And viewing things that way leads to more destruction because you just blamed a bunch of innocent people, so you created a reason for them to be mad at you, right? And thus the cycle continues, or
and then
starts,
those people become collateral damage. And
well, very much like what's going to happen at the end of the season with a certain elven sorceress in a certain town full of children.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Certainly that.
we're gonna have a big talk about that one, chat.
We sure are. More on Stragabor and Istrid while we're there. He said there's some great back and forth here, some lines. Istrid says, "What are you saying? Yennefer is related to Falca?" Stragabor is such a jerk. He's like, "Of course not. A historian should know bloodlines better." He's like, "I wasn't saying that. I was saying you were saying that." But he just political. Very that was clever. Like I appreciate that, because that is how a lot of people speak in like public discourse when a lot of people are watching and they're trying to one up each other. It's like just any little opportunity to make the other person look bad, even if it's not deserved. Like Stragabor is, I gotta say, he's a good character. As awful as he is, he's a good bad character.
He's got some good one-liners for sure. He knows how to wound you with words.
Yeah, he's not dumb. He's a pretty good villain, and I think he's also distracting from the bigger villains, right? That's another thing that he's cover for other villains to hide behind and be like, look at how bad Stragabor is.
Because you have these things you dislike about him, like his racist tendencies,
right? Like that's effective, right? It's like a really effective way to make the audience hate him. Is like, this guy is racist, like like blatantly, like horribly, like in ways that we can see, that you can recognize that happen in the real world in modern times, right?
It's
you see
like
this kind of attitude out there.
It's almost like Joffrey realized that he's dangerous, but then there's someone like Cersei who's or Tywin, someone that's infinitely more powerful that can use their actual brains. And I'm not saying that Stragabor can't, but there's other people out there that are willing to possibly go even further than Stragabor would for certain things, and that's scary and dangerous.
I agree, because like you said with the example of Joffrey, is like that's the example of evil that stumbles over itself on its way to doing evil, whereas someone like Stragabor or maybe Vilgafortz or someone else, maybe Emperor M here, is really effective with their evil. It's like an administrative skill at evil.
Like 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. They're trying to calculate themselves ahead instead of like just like kind of like this short-term gains. Seems like Stragabor's maybe focused a little bit more on the short term, and other people are maybe focusing a little bit more on the kind of the long game.
Well, I mean, again, I think it's just Stragabor is playing on an older playing field. He is just not. He's not playing on. He doesn't see the board in the modern light. He's still very much stuck in an older viewpoint, because obviously he has to have seen the way the wind blowing correctly. Like you don't get to that point of power and stay there for as long as he has without being extremely powerful and ruthless and strong and whatever, all that stuff.
That's his blind spot. That's what you're trying to say, is that's kind of his blind spot a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just dealing with older problems, and whereas Vilgafortz is seeing a very different set of problems.
Yeah, like back in the day, it was just elves versus humans. You could say that was kind of how it was, but that is not how it is anymore. In part because the races are commingled so much, not just in living, but in actual blood. You know, and like people, there's half elves, quarter elves, eighth elves, and vice versa, all over the place. And like, what do you like? That's literally the first non-prologue chapter of Blood of Elves discusses this concept of how like, well, we've been mingling for centuries. Like, what do you even, it's only recently that this has become a problem for some of you have started to point to this and complain, but it's actually been happening for centuries without problem. It's only recently people started to call it out. And why? Because it's not a real problem, you know? And I appreciated that. It was one of the things that drew me to the series, because I started Blood of Elves first. I didn't realize that The Last Wish was the first book. So I read that first chapter. It's like the first thing I read. So I was like, wait, I'm in the wrong spot.
Let's jump to the ceremony here, because there's some really big moments for this. Do we have anything that we want to talk about before we get to the ceremony, guys?
One line I wanted to point out, another thing Stragabor says that is kind of a general truism that's probably more true about him than other people. He says, the only thing we can be sure of is that no one is ever what they seem, which coming from an illusionist is like, yeah, well, true. So maybe that should have been in the funny moments section, but it's certainly, I definitely wanted to cite that line before we moved on.
Yeah, and I'll just shout out to Honest Trailers, because they kind of focused a little bit on the bath scene and were like, you know, Anya Charlotte got the Amelia Clark "my eyes are up here" deal.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, the bath scene, which was, you know, just kind of, you know, not risque at all. It was like, okay, good. Like you have this note here about season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yennefer's
season 1 we
just
would have seen
about,
a lot more of them, I guess we could just say.
Yeah. So now everyone's pretty much had a bath. Has Jaskier had a bath yet? Because Geralt had his season 1
has a
bath
later in the season.
Okay, yeah, you're right. He does. That's right. So everyone has baths, right? Because Ciri gets a bath at Nivillans, and these ladies have a bath here. So yeah, baths for all. The important line in that one is they're like, yeah, well, what's lost is lost, and Yennefer, who's sitting there with no power, is like, I hope not.
Let's not say that.
Does
say the other thing?
Yeah, let's not say. Let's say some things. Let's say some things that are lost can be recovered, please. Who was the fourth mage in that one? There was Triss, Yennefer, Sabrina, and someone else. I don't know who that was. Anyone know?
No.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out, but there wasn't many clues, and it didn't seem super important. But whatever. Yeah, I don't even think she had a line, so it's just fourth woman.
Well, we do know that Sabrina and Triss are important, so that's important characters. Sabrina popping her face up again will be interesting too.
Yeah, Sabrina's interesting for sure. But yeah, let's like you said, Kyle. Let's go to the
absolution
thing. Yeah, and of course this is set up with the scene ahead of time when Yennefer, just passes by Kaer's cell and they have their interaction, which obviously is important to set this up. And one thing, like I didn't love this scene. There's parts of it that are good, but it's just not that believable to me that they would be able to escape. I understand that the lack of magic is important to have that as a thing that can exist in this world. Zones with no magic, I don't have a problem with that, but I didn't, and I'm glad they set up that Yennefer knows how to fight, because that was already done. It's not like, where does she learn how to swing an axe like that? That's already been done, so we've already established that. That's fine. I don't care about that part, but just no one chases them. They just get away. Like, I don't know. That was a little awkward.
I mean, the fact that you can just knock down those huge pies, she just has to go like, and yeah. I will say I was actually very tense the first time I watched the scene, because it was like, I'd heard that things were different in the season, and I was like, I don't think they're gonna kill Kaer, but I guess they could. And then so I was like,
she got so excited after this too, because she messaged me. She's like, Yennefer and Kaer, what's going on? I was like, yes, I'm so excited. I'm the first one that watched this.
Yeah, so that was very exciting.
I agree with you though, that moment did have tension. I was pretty skeptical that they would kill Kaer, but I was like, yeah, it's possible. I can't be 100% confident here. So and then they did. You're right. Like that did work. Like them being together, that worked. Like as I'll criticize how they got together, but they had some good dialogue, some good lines with each other. So I like where it went, certainly.
Yeah, no, I still don't really get why Yennefer was like, well, come on. I was like, I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay.
Their positions. Wow, I can't speak. In life are very interesting, right? Well, like we have Kaer, questioning his faith, much like Fringilla is, and we have Yennefer, questioning kind of the state of the government and the rulers and all of this, and they're both in really interesting places at this point. It's like, okay, like Yennefer realizes that she's really not that all important in the grand scheme of things to all of these people who are playing politics, and Kaer's like, well, I'm gonna be beheaded here by the northern kingdoms. Like, am I really that important to the White Flame and all of that? So it's like there's these big questionings happening within Kaer and Yennefer at this point, right? They're like, which kind of path do we take? And I think that's, I mean, we see Yennefer make a big decision, obviously, and that's what I think makes this so interesting, because we think that they're from opposite sides of the playing field, like the good and bad, right? Cintra versus Nilfgaard, but it's like it's not really like that. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, Nilfgaard is bad because they want to conquer everything, but it's more complicated than just, like Nilfgaard is evil and Cintra is good,
Yeah, definitely.
I will say I kind of disagree with you, Kyle. I think I still think that Kaer is very resolute here. Like what does he say? Something about like how like if Emir,
he says, if the White Flame asks for my sacrifice, I am ready for the darkness.
Well, I'm not saying that
find our true strength.
I'm not saying that he's not resolute. I'm just saying he's like, well, I'm gonna die here. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, he was expecting to die. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. That's for sure. But I think it's important to like note that this doesn't faze him as much as other things will later.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because it's not his faith. This is just like, well, okay, death is, that happens. That's part of like he's accepted that much, but like he cares about his faith more than he cares about his life.
Mm-hmm.
Like
part
of why he's risen so high.
Death would be easier than him being stripped of all of his ranks, for example. That would be. Him being demoralized is much worse, I think, for him as kind of who he is as a character.
And so we have this setup of from the politicians here. We have Foltest and Vizimir. Meve is there, which is cool. She doesn't have a line until later, not this episode, but I like seeing those characters. And Foltest and Vizimir say they have a conversation about Vizimir says Yennefer is worth keeping an eye on, according to Dijkstra, right? He says his spy master says that, and Foltest like, they all need to be watched.
Look around, buddy.
And Foltest is right. Like they just elected Vilgafortz. Like Vilgafortz leads the ceremony, which shows the progression of events. Vilgafortz has won. Tisea and Vilgafortz's plan has worked. He's in charge now. He's leading the ceremony. So there you go. And that has progressed. So Yennefer running away doesn't make her look less guilty, does it? It makes her look more guilty. And then she says, I'm saving me, But you had a question here. I think this is your note, Michal, or maybe it's you, Kyle, whichever, about the acts. Like, yeah, Deathless Mother's in her head and wants her to go through with this. And what does she gain? Why does Deathless Mother want her to kill Kay here? Is it because my only thought is maybe it's because the Deathless Mother knows that Emhyr is also after the same thing. They all want Ciri, so they're competing for Ciri. So if Kaer is killed, maybe that slows down their progress. But Kaer, I don't know, because Kaer is the Black Knight that was after her. So if she knows that, which is entirely possible, like Ciri's dreams keep repeating this. I don't know if they're in Ciri's dreams and know this for some reason, or have been in Kaer's head. Which to say it couldn't get into Kaer's head. So it's a little tricky how this information got out there, but it's not like a plot hole. I just don't know. And but yeah, so I think that's the answer, but I'm not super confident in that. Does that kind of satisfy your question, or is that not really what you were thinking about?
I kind of no, it's definitely a good theory. I sort of wonder if it's just like the Deathless Mother is trying to get her to make the bad, easy choices, Like,
Okay,
because
yeah.
theoretically, if what Yennefer wants is like to be part of the life at Thanedd, then this would theoretically be the way there. Although it might also indicate that like that actually probably would have caused her a lot of like it might have been used as like Stragabor being like, look how easily she chopped off this innocent man's head.
Yeah. And she saw that coming. I think you're right. I think that's a really good insight, because she, as we've said several times, she's really astute with the politics. She just doesn't play along. And so she probably understood that having her do it would have some political consequences and would be used by her enemies to make her look bad, which I think is part of why she tried to sneak out the night before. But Istrid stopped her. Is like, look, Stragabor's watching. He's going to see you leave. He's going to stop you from leaving, which even more probably confirms to her that she was right, that Stragabor was trying to was going to manipulate this and use this against her.
She's screwed on either way, right? That's what makes their play even stronger, because either choice that Yennefer makes, even though she was the hero of the battle Sodden, she's completely fucked here.
Yeah, right. And it's yeah, totally. And it's so awkward for Yennefer, because she's like, well, she wants to escape and Istrid's helping her, but here he is. He obviously wants something from her. He's obviously still in love with her. And he reveals that he lied about Nilfgaard's intentions. Or he's like, by the way, I lied about this. And she's like, well, crap. Like, what do I do with all this information? Like, here you are trying to help me, but now you kind of suck too, but actually you're useful, but actually I'm trying to get away from here, so thanks for that. But damn, that's a lot. Should we talk about Cintra? That's the last little bit. It's kind of short in this episode. This episode's mostly about the ceremony and the build up to it and the politics, and then Kaer Morhen. But
yeah, we can do that. Then we can talk about Dijkstra's entrance.
Yeah, that was cool, huh? Okay, so Cintra, because it's set up by this scene in Cintra, because you see what's happening. It's probably not the capital, but it might be. I'm not clear on where it is. It's because it's not all burned, right? And there's this giant monolith when they do the overhead shot, just huge, right in the center of the city, which is why I'm not clear on exactly where this is. And that could be relevant later, this giant monolith. The fact that monoliths have become important. You would think that a really big one might be extra important. So either way, it's cool, even if we don't know exactly what's going on. So Francesca believes that this is where Ithlin wants them. Filavandrel, he's still not sure about that. But he's going along with it, as we talked about last time. And she's admits to Fringilla later that this was the Deathless Mother, not Ithlin. And there's this Commander Hake guy, the Nilfgaardian, who argues against all these elves coming in. He's kind of like, who wrote he's the Stragabor of the South here? That's great. That's a good note. And so she wants Dol. We get like a sense of what her goal is. She wants Dol Blathana, which is a pretty neat tie-in to what we've already learned, which is that's where Edge of the World takes place. That's where we first meet Filavandrel, where the so-called Silver Towers were. Which I believe is more metaphorical than there's actual silver towers, but still, that was their kingdom that he lost. He was complaining about, and so this is what they're aiming to get back. So that's all very consistent. And Fringilla's faith is explored further, like not just the prophecy stuff, but she believes, or at least acts like she believes. I think she does believe in it. That spreading the worship of the White Flame and spreading Nilfgaard's rule will improve the lives of people in general. Like anyone who comes into Nilfgaard's rule, that nation will prosper. I think she actually believes that. It's not just, a speech to her. What do you all think about that? You think she's a true believer in the politics as well as the magic, or is it just one serving the other or something else?
I mean, I think a lot of these kinds of beliefs are both genuine and self-serving in a certain way. Like I don't think she would necessarily recognize if it was self-serving, but like extreme belief kind of comes from something, and I think that's usually personal. But I don't think that makes her like dishonest or anything. I do think that she believes in what she's doing. She's kind of like Melisandre, right? Like it's you know, Melisandre is a true believer, but she's also like probably been conditioned to be that for certain reasons and things she's experienced, you know.
It's a little bit of
Good
both,
point,
I
yeah.
think. I think
Yeah.
it is.
We should get like a jar to toss a coin every time we make a Game of Thrones reference.
We've made a lot. We've made a lot this episode for sure.
It'll be a lot of coins, yeah.
Toss a coin to your references.
When we talk Game of Thrones, oh.
I think we covered most of what we need to cover for episode 3, What Is Lost. Do we have anything we wanted to mention before we jumped into Redanian Intelligence?
Yeah, just a few last notes, a few important quotes, just fun stuff, not like big plot points, but like tongue-in-cheek comments, book references, things like that. We usually like to save these for the end. There's the little bit of discussion of there was the during the ceremony, there's a moment where Yennefer's like, "Where's Triss?" And they're like, "She's been called away." And well, we know where she's been called away to Kaer Morhen. And when they're having mushrooms at at the meal, and they're like, no mushrooms this time, and they're like, "Don't talk about the mushrooms. No, we don't talk about the mushrooms to outsiders." And Triss is like looking around like, "What are you guys obviously trying to conceal from me very poorly right now?" Like, and it's the Witcher mushrooms or whatever that apparently she can eat those, but not some of the other herbs that Witchers can take. Which brings me to my next anecdote, which Ciri, Geralt they have that talk about how she's getting hurt on the pendulum, and how, he says, "Look, if one of us gets hurt, we can just fill them with veratrum, spurge, and hawthorn, take a nap, and you're fine. We can't do that to you. We can't give you those elixirs," because she hasn't been through the trial of the grasses and all that. So it is. She's like, "Look," he's like, it's not just because you're a girl and because I'm trying to be protective of you. It's you literally don't have this extra physicality that is too dangerous for us to put you through, because it shouldn't be done to anyone, really, but it was done to us. It's in the past. We can't change that, but we're not doing that again. Or we're going to get close to doing that again. But Geralt's very opposed to it. And that quote is from the actual first story, from the Witcher story number 1. The Witcher, the mixture which helped the Witcher gain full control of this body. I'm pretty sure that's a misprint. The mixture which helped the Witcher gain full control of his body was chiefly made up of veratrum, stramonium, hawthorn, and spurge. The other ingredients had no name in any human language. So they dropped stramonium, but it's veratrum, spurge, and hawthorn again. And you know how we love our spurge.
We certainly do.
I think we just love that Aziz loves herb lore. Let's just say that.
You may not love herb lore, but you may love that I love herb lore.
Episode 4, Redanian Intelligence. Really, really interesting episode.
Well, hold on, not quite there yet. I had 2 more notes. One actually really just two more notes. One was Triss saying, "I'm not on to Saya's plaque," which was a nod to the books where she is on the plaque, but mistakenly, because she obviously doesn't die. And then my favorite funny line of the episode was when Yennefer is trying to sneak out, and she's already been bumped into Kaer and bumped into Stragabor, and now then Istrid. She's like, "What is it with men lurking about this place?"
I like that also.
It's like, yeah, what is it with you people just hiding in the shadows, stalking me? Damn it, cut that out. But actually, that's I'm wrong. There is one more anecdote that I forgot. That's arguably even funnier. Okay, so last time we joked about how Phil Evangel curses that lying bard. But what we forgot to mention was that lying bard was equipped with a lute that he sung all those songs on by Phil Evangel in the Edge of the World story. So maybe if you'd given him a worse lute, those stories wouldn't have spread as much. Sucker.
That is true. The only thing I want to say is that Ciri is a breakout star in Continental Ninja Warrior. So
You're right. Continental Ninja Warrior. She already has a crowd watching her, already has a following.
yeah.
Even
If
her
someone wanted to
blood is-
intercut that with the 2 commentary guys from Ninja Warrior, I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, Kyle. Now we
No.
can go.
Now, I was just going to say, speaking of Ninja Warriors, everyone is after Ciri hiding in the shadows.
Yeah.
A little bit of a homage to Shard of Ice. We weren't sure if we were going to get some of those kind of inklings in the second season, as you know, we can't get all the short stories, but it was some of the tone we got from, which is really nice. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, I was really pleasantly surprised to get Shard of Ice stuff. It wasn't Shard of Ice, but it had a lot of elements to it. The sewers, the Zoogle, the Istrid Geralt stuff. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
And it's spread out over a couple of episodes too. We could get some Istrid stuff too, which kind of ties in with it too. Which
And
is
the unicorn reference in a couple of episodes.
Yeah, it's so neat. So
this one was kind of a bit more of a surprise because in episode 1 we for sure knew we were getting Grain of Truth.
Yeah.
Well, we start off the episode with Ciri and Geralt and the appearance of Triss meeting Ciri.
Yeah, that's so neat. So apparently they had originally written Ciri and Triss as like Ciri was gonna have a crush, like a schoolgirl crush on Triss, and that's why some of these scenes are filmed the way they are. But they sort of dropped that apparently. I'm not sure at what point they dropped it, but they realized that, yeah, I mean, she's not really a schoolgirl anymore. They had planned this for when the show first started filming, and well, Freya Allen is a young lady who is less young than she was when they wrote those lines. So it's not quite as.
She looks a lot older in season 2 as well. We'll just say that.
I don't know. I kind of still would have liked that. Like she
could.
Yeah, she's a teenager. I mean, she can have crushes. Like
yeah. I'm kind of with you, Michal. I don't see why that was a reason to drop it. You know, like it seems like it could have still done it. Like, why not just have her have a teen crush? Like, what's the difference? So what's the, you know? So I don't know, but that's a thing. And we have the. Yeah, it's like the trail. It's like there's some false tension there. I love that. They're like, what is it? It's some sort of sound. Is it oh no, it's Triss. And Geralt kills a boar while Triss and Ciri are talking and getting to know each other. Yeah. And yeah, she is really needed, isn't she?
Oh my god.
And Geralt's carrying a boar.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff carried over from the Triss scenes from Blood of Elves, which I appreciate because I like that stuff a lot. Triss pushing back on the Witchers, the little debates they have, I really like that stuff. So a lot of it's here.
Yeah, just being mom Triss is just excellent.
She got a strong personality, and I think she reads the room very well. Like Vilgafortz, she understands what's going on, and she's like, listen, she feels the vibes.
I guess she's like Vilgafortz, but she actually wants to help people.
Yeah,
like
she's like good Vilgafortz.
She's like the opposite of Vilgafortz in that she's not awful.
Yeah. Similar skills, opposite personality. Because they both have a talent for medical stuff, right? Like Vilgafortz is a little well, we'll get there later. So yeah, like someone wrote here in the notes, non-Witcher influence on Ciri, which is super important because she obviously has lots of non-Witcher elements to her destiny, to her abilities, to her inborn talents that she needs to learn how to use. And heck, she's a woman. She needs other women in her life. Like there's just that very, very basic aspect, which I, again, from the book, I really appreciate how realistic Sapkowski attempted to be here with just like basic stuff about like, she's a girl. She's certain things girls need that boys don't, that's, you can't just skip over that.
I think we do realize too that Geralt's gonna be a good father figure because he wants to help her, and we do know that Vesemir can offer wisdom, and we do know that Yennefer is going to be there at some point. But having a true friend like Triss who has good intentions, that's difficult to find on the continent. You know what I mean? People are playing politics and doing all this other shit. Everybody wants Ciri from some sort of selfish reason, and Triss is not there for a selfish reason at all.
Well, I feel like Geralt also feels he looks ashamed, like when he hasn't like really fully anticipated all of Ciri's needs, like when Triss kind of mentions everything. And I thought that was very sweet.
Yeah, and it's funny because it does kind of lead to that. Like Triss harangues them a bit, rightfully so in a lot of cases, but then they're kind of like, dude, I mean, that is why we brought you here, to address these things. Like, you are the
here, you take care of it.
Yeah, it's like, we're not trying, we don't know how to do it. You're right, we don't know how to do it. That's so help, please.
This is a good foresight by Geralt, though. It's like Geralt realizes that he doesn't have all the skills right now to understand Ciri, and that there is. I mean, look how it happened with Lambert and Cohen and all of them. So he's like, this is a good idea, and I think this is a +1 for Geralt as Daddy Geralt.
Yeah, definitely. He's like accepting, doing what needs to be done, even if he doesn't like it, or he knows other people will, even if it will make him unpopular with the other Witchers or what have you. Yeah.
Do we want to continue with the Kaer Morhen stuff, or do we want to jump in kind of the next scene with the Dijkstra?
Why don't we stay with Kaer Morhen and just get through it all, and then
we'll jump into the Redanian stuff. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Well, what else do we have here? The lab stuff. Should we talk about that?
Stellacite.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. The whole discussion of how Ciri is different in some ways, like how she's got this massive magic within her, but she can't do basic Witcher signs, which in multiple places it's pointed out that you need very little magic to be able to do Witcher signs. So the fact that she has this insane power within her, yet can't do Witcher signs, is very peculiar. And it becomes even more peculiar when we realize that Elder Blood is quite possibly, or is likely to be a key ingredient in the original Witcher mutagen. So that is kind of odd that this Elder Blood that she has maybe is part of the reason she can't do Witcher signs, yet you need this to make Witchers. But, chemistry is, isn't intuitive. So it's not, I'm not saying this is a problem. It's just slightly confusing.
Cough people later in the season who try and do stupid things.
Yeah, right. So there's this all this stuff going on with this magic, which I think is really neat. What they're trying to go through, like, I don't know, eldritch detective work here. I like it. I like lore. I like studying the lore. It's like making science out of the lore. This is very cool. This is my jam. And they're so confused. They're like, Stellacite in this Leshy and in the Myriapod. What the hell is going on? And the monoliths, and Ciri wakes up in bed after having another one of her like prophetic
fever dreams.
And the line is, daughter of chaos belongs to us. Join the procession. There's only death here. And that's with Triss witnessing it. She goes into the dream with her, and it does not go how Triss expects. She's like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll go into your dream with you and look around. And it's like, oh my God, what is happening in here? This is some evil, dangerous stuff. And it's fiery, which is really neat because, we have this backdrop of fire magic, which is being set up as this important thing. Oh, by the way, that's something from episode 3 we didn't discuss really briefly. That's important. That Stragabor, when he's getting in Yennefer's head, he's asking her, what was it like to control fire magic? And he's got this lust in his voice. And it's because normally his like political mask is very strong. He's always like, oh, I'm the reasonable one. But the lust comes out of him when he's talking to her about fire magic. So,
and this fire magic is kind of this engorging thing, like this dark, like it's used for chaos, and chaos is used for death. So it's like, it's not a good thing.
Which of course ties into his whole Falca burning people and all that. It's all like twisted together in ways that aren't entirely clear, but are compelling and dark and interesting.
It's interesting that Ciri, her visions are fiery, and that she's tied to a prophecy which calls about essentially an ice age, though. So there's kind of this ice and fire element going on. Which is
the extremes, the elements. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Dink. Coin in the in the Game of Thrones show.
Hey, ice and fire. Come on. I didn't mean to do it like that.
No, George R. R. Martin invented the idea of ice and fire being a contrast.
No one ever thought of that before 1996.
Not even that Robert Frost poem, man.
No.
George R. R. Martin taught that to Robert Frost 100 years before he was born.
We can laugh about it. That was a good one, Michal. I actually wish I had a little coin. I gotta, you know what? I gotta get that sound effect for the soundboard for in the future. So, but it is interesting for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I like that the unexpected stuff. The way Ciri's powers keep throwing people off, like not being what they expect, yet everyone's after them. Is really cool. And I think I said this before. I like how they even folded Vesemir into this. Like he's not trying to hurt her when she's like, I want the injection first. He's like, no. But he does want her power. He isn't willing to harm her until he is.
Well, it's interesting.
She has to accept it first, you know.
I think it's very important to note that he like gets the idea or anyway, like he's at the grave, right? He's at Eskel's grave, and then that's when he finds the flowers, and that's when he takes it to Triss and is like,
yes,
there's elder blood here, and it seems like it's in Ciri. And like, so that chain of like, you know, I mean, if you just look at it from the top down, it's like, Vesemir wants Ciri's blood. You know?
Yeah.
But there's a little bit more nuance there.
Yeah, right. Like he's sad. Like you said last time, he wanted to find out what did this. And he wants to not have it not happen again. And all of a sudden, it's like dropped into his lap. Like, oh my God, elder blood. And this supposedly is how we make witchers. And we don't know how to make witchers. So yeah, it's like a godsend in a sense. And then, you know, of course,
his quote is powerful. He says, "Destiny has given us a gift."
Ooh, yeah.
Destiny, he says.
Yes. So then you know, as time goes by and he thinks it through, he talks to Geralt, he realizes it's not what he thinks. It's not quite that. There's a lot more danger in this, and he has to remember that it's not good to make more witchers, actually, in a lot of ways. You know, it's bad for the children. And there's that really amazing, dark, powerful flashback he has. I forget if that's actually in this episode or the next one, but we can talk about it now.
Yeah,
sure. Where he has these brief moments of children suffering from his memory, which reminds us of Nightmare on the Wolf, because that's when that all happened for him. And we see some of that on screen in Nightmare of the Wolf. So that was a really powerful moment. He's like, of course not. He's like, no way. I'm not injecting you with this. And that's the perfect thing to have him think of as to why he would never do that to somebody else. It's like, no way. Dead children? Screw that. Of course not. You know, like out of the question. Absolutely. You know.
Speaking of Nightmare of the Wolf, everyone, kind of a plug for our pod. Nightmare of the Wolf episode is up on the podcast feed. You'll want to go check that out.
Yeah.
And if you haven't watched that, it's like an hour and 15 minutes worth your time.
And this is the right time, like within the season, like if you don't watch the episodes all in a row, you know, like I think like right after episode 2 or 3 or 4, it's a good time for it. Like that's when a lot of the stuff really clicks.
Vesemir has a completely different accent, but we're just rolling it with it. It's fine.
It's been 100 years, you know.
and you know how I know it's really good? Michal is a great devil's advocate, and she really analyzes things for what they are, and she loved this. So the fact that she loved an animated version of the Witcher stock of it, guys, you got to go watch it. It's really good. And they're making another one. They're making another standalone one with we don't know what yet.
Yeah, we still don't know any details, but we will drop them when we find out.
Same studio, so interesting to interject there just for a minute.
Studio Vesemir. Studio Mir. It should be Studio Vesemir.
Studio Mir. But this is kind of what we talked a little bit in the last episode, guys, in that, you know, this building of the mythology of the Witcherverse, and especially in this season with the conjunction of spheres and the elder blood. This is just like, wow, this is the 4th episode and we're getting major hits of elder blood stuff here, right? Like it's like this kind of stuff is the kind of stuff that we know is going to be end game stuff for the end of the Witcher. It's like, it's not just going to go away. So the fact that we get characters like Triss and Vesemir who are taking interest in this kind of stuff, like I said earlier, having these kind of characters get interested in it, like characters like Istrid, is a big deal, because not as many, I don't want to say it's not as prevalent in the books, but they're really pushing it to the forefront. I think it's really important for the TV adaptation.
Yeah, well said. Before we talk about the other plot lines. At least you guys may have other things to say, but I have only one last thing, and that is I thought it was kind of interesting, like the characterization of Ciri when she comes in like dressed up nicely, and Triss is like, oh, you look nice, and the men are like teasing her a bit. I thought their teasing was pretty mild, considering all the other teasing they've done of her. But that kind of reveals that she's a lot more sensitive about this. Like when they were teasing her about her toughness, she's like, I'll show you how tough I am. But when Lambert makes a comment about her dress, she storms off, and it's really kind of mild. Like it was definitely teasing and rude, but it was like, she's a little sensitive about this. And Triss picks up on it. Is like, what does Triss say? She says, the truth is, you're choosing to be ignorant assholes, aren't you? So I'm like, yeah, get him, Triss.
This kind of goes back to the past of Ciri. I mean, being a princess before and being able to be girly and express herself and however she wanted. And she's in a situation where she's not necessarily allowed to. And well, she's allowed to express herself, but she's obviously been through some tragedy and kind of taken down a few pegs here. And I think Triss recognizes that, like, hey, like she's been through a lot, man. She's still a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like give her, cut her a fucking break here. I think that's what
I mean, it's also like, to be honest, like I don't know if this is accurate or whatever, but like when you're growing up as a teenager and you're making your first choices about what you want to wear as opposed to what like people are telling you to wear, like that's like an emotional thing. And then when people are like, you look so stupid, you're dressing like a girl, like that's really painful. It goes to a different part of her than I think the other, teasing, even if they meant this more gently, it cuts much closer to, I guess, a painful part of Ciri's experience.
Yeah, teasing and bullying in high school, there's a lot of kids that were really hurt by that. And I'm not saying that this is the same thing, but it definitely, people go home and they cry. It's like, it's an emotional thing for sure.
It's a sore spot. Yeah. And I thought that was pretty well done, actually, because like you said, Michal, like it's not the same. It's a different emotion that they're playing with there. And even they seemed a little confused as to why she stormed off. She's like, normally when we tease her, she takes it pretty well. She just fires back. Like she's made fun of Lambert to his face before. Like she gets into the banter. Like she's pretty good at it. She made Cohen laugh at him, stuff like that. So that's why they kind of mutter. They're like, well, we're just playing around, because they were surprised too. They're like, I guess we struck a nerve. I didn't mean to do that. I thought I was just.
I don't think they also realized that she's probably at the point of like emotional exhaustion. She dealt with like the death of her whole family, and she's basically moved into her new home. Like moving is not a thing that I mean, they trekked across the continent, which is incredibly dangerous. They could have died. I mean, they almost did die. You know what I mean? So it's like she's at this point. I think this buildup of things, they continue to kind of just chip away. And we get, as humans, we're human. We get aggravated at certain points. I think there's a point of aggravation here for her. You know what I mean? She's like, it's just like, it may have seemed more like a small thing, but there was a buildup of things that actually led to this more bigger reaction, I would say. Yeah.
Definitely. I guess there's one other thing here in this scene that we should talk about before moving on to, which is obviously when Ciri has her revelation or prophecy, that's what kicks Geralt into going off and solving problem mode, which also, they have, he has to part from Triss there as well. And that was a nice moment that we should address. What'd y'all think of that scene? A little bit different from the books, but also a little similar. Geralt and Triss,
there's a nice sweetness to it. There was like a gentle caring, like a recognition, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, they were both. I mean, they both suffered. Like Triss still has some trauma about what happened to her. We saw some of that in the bath scene when she's not ready to like let her scar be shown and all that, and that she's the one who says what is lost, and or no, that's not true. That's Sabrina says that, but they're talking about that with Triss. So anyway, pretty cool. Pretty good.
I think too, like we're kind of like defaulting to the point where like we've seen Geralt sleep with a few women. You know what I mean? It's more of a tender moment where like he's like really appreciative of Triss. You know what I mean? And she genuinely feels that. Like for Geralt to kind of, you know what I mean? It's nice.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe Triss. I'm not saying Triss doesn't feel appreciated, but to hear it from Geralt is different. She respects him a lot.
Okay.
Shall we dive into Redania?
Yeah, let's talk about
wanting to talk about
Redania.
this for like.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm like a little kid. Like,
Yeah, the introduction of Dijkstra. Okay, remember didn't we complain about this? We're like, Dijkstra? We thought it was Dijkstra. Like, dang it.
no, that was Nevelin.
Yeah, same with Nevelin. Well, I thought it is Dijkstra. It was also Nevelin. Yeah, you're right. That is what we talked about. But it's the same thing applies here because I thought it was Dijkstra and it's Dijkstra.
Yeah, we did say Dijkstra, but it's
so
fine.
Nevelin, Dijkstra. Dang it. Well, you know who we're talking about.
Dijkstra stops an assassination of Vizimir. That's quite the entrance, huh?
Yeah, it was a bit strong, right? A little, yeah.
I just, Graham McTavish is such a fantastic actor, and for him,
Yeah.
like he's such a commanding presence. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever watched what's it called, the Highlander show,
Outlander. Yeah.
Outlander, Highlander.
I
wow.
mean, it takes a lot of it's in Scotland, so Highlander's not.
Outlander. He's so fan. He's
Not
so
far
he's so commanding when he's on screen. He just walks in with this confidence, and he's about his business. You're like, shit, better not be messing with this guy, man.
I do appreciate that because there's no way they were going to cast someone who's actually as big as the character in the book is, who's like more than 7 feet tall, but he is big. He is a lot bigger than you expect like a spy master to be. So it still works. It still implies that
he's got that swagger, though.
Guy. Yeah,
it's more of a swagger. That's what I really enjoyed about it.
Yeah,
Michal, what did you think about his entrance? Like, he's definitely a fan favorite character for sure. I mean, look at the premier news outlet for The Witcher, Redanian Intelligence. I mean, those guys, you know what I'm saying? They based it off their man Dijkstra, one of the favorite characters. But I mean, what did you think about his appearance? Because this was one that we knew. We're like, okay, like he's cast as Dijkstra. He's the bald guy. We know who he's going to be. And he didn't disappoint. I felt like it was really good dialogue. He commanded the scene well, and it was like, okay, this is where we're going with the Northern Kingdom stuff. I was just like, yes.
Yeah, no, very, very, very powerful entrance. Definitely unforgettable. It makes a huge impact, and like also adds a nice, I guess, like politics. Like we have wizard politics, but now we have like the political people doing their politics, which is a nice element to add to all this.
Like chess.
Yeah, really. I mean, this is like a 9-sided chessboard. I will point out though that he kills the woman who's offering Vizimir. No, not Vizimir. Whatever.
Yeah, it's Vizimir. That is
King Vizimir. Yeah. The poisoned drink, and then he makes the guy drink the poisoned drink, and of course it's poisoned, and he dies. But he's like, "I'm sorry for the theatrics. I had to be sure." And I'm like, "You just killed that woman before being sure."
Were you only sure about her and not about him? Because it seemed like
this is like, okay, wow, you're definitely splitting hairs in terms of what you need to be sure, sir.
And that was a really mighty throw. Like that blade went way through her.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Jeez.
Shouting, "My king" would surely have done the same thing, but let's do the murder.
It's not what he says, it's how he says it. It's like very cocky.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
True.
He's gallivanting a little bit,
And Vizimir is so funny. He's just like, he's almost been killed by people he knew since
he was
young. And he's like, well, hurry up because I'm hungry.
He's so bad. He's so bad.
Yeah, it's great. I appreciate how awful he is.
I do like the comical element of Vizimir though. He's awful, but he's funny because he's so like it's like this. It's really nice.
Like he's dangerous because he's a king, but he's and kings have power, but he's kind of dumb. But he's not dumb in a sense that he understands like power. He understands opportunity. Like he's got a little of that ability because when Dijkstra brings up the potential to take Cintra, which is like, aha, now there's other players moving in on the political side. Like there's no magic coming from Dijkstra here. He's not interested in the elder blood. Now, behind all that, we have Philippa the owl, who might be interested in that. That hasn't really been addressed in the show yet, one way or another. In the
You
books,
guys know
it's
Philip.
addressed.
He's a great owl. You know.
Yeah. So this is more of like a regular power play, right? Nations attacking nations when there's an opportunity. Now, of course, fueling all that is other ambitions potentially, but sticking with just Dijkstra and Vizimir, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. When he brings this up, Vizimir's like, oh, Calanthe's dead and they're weak. I see what you mean. I could have thought of this on my own, but hey, that's what I pay you to do. Now about dinner.
it was a nice suggestion, more power. Okay, I'm interested.
He's like,
in more power,
all right, yeah. How much work do I have to do to make this happen? Because if you're going to take care of it, I'm all for it. But if I have to think about it a lot, I don't know.
The funny way it's framed though is just like, oh, we can make a play for Cintra, and it doesn't seem like this terribly big thing because of what just happened, because of this big kind of entrance that Dijkstra made, but we can't forget that Nilfgaard fucking occupies Cintra. But the way they're talking, they seem so confident. It's like, okay, it's like the way they present the scene, it's like, oh, the Northern Kingdom's pretty powerful too. Like I just like that kind of swagger that they left it, like with the little kind of crumbs there, and it's like, oh, that really adds that excitement. Like there is another kingdom out there that that has a lot of power.
And it makes sense, right? Like Nilfgaard is a conqueror, is an aggressive conqueror. So Cintra Redania can play it as, we're liberating Cintra, right? We're getting rid of these conquerors and returning, but to make sure things go well in Cintra, we're going to watch over it afterwards, right? We're going to administer it until it gets back on its feet. Right. And meanwhile, they're just sticking in the hooks, and eventually their real plan is to control it themselves. Right. That's their actual plan. But they're just using freedom and justice as their marketing slogans and their cover story. And it's pretty subtle. I appreciate it. As weird as some of these scenes are, like the knife throwing and this when he's drinking and brainstorming shirtless, it was kind of strange. But the way they execute the planning and the way this plays out with like Dara being brought back in, and how Dijkstra's like, we don't know anything about him here. No one knows anything about him, which is a really big statement to make for a spy master. A spy master is out here saying, we don't know anything about him. That's the problem. We don't know what his goals are, which we know what his goals are. At least we know one of them, which is this white flame business with Ciri. So that we know more than Dijkstra knows about that. Right.
Wow. And ting, we're talking Dijkstra is the Varys of The Witcher. Okay. I just put another coin in our jar here. He's the guy who has the knowledge. He's got his spies everywhere gaining knowledge for him. And we even see information come from the similar kind of way. So that's pretty cool too.
So the fact that he doesn't know anything about M here is a big says a lot, right? Like I have spies everywhere, but even I don't know what's up with this guy. So that tells you a lot.
Okay. Question though. I knew about I don't want to talk about it too much because obviously it's a pretty big spoiler, and we'll talk about Philip on another episode. But the owl, did you know the owl right away? I was like, yep, I knew right away who it was.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because you see through the owl's eyes. Like once you get the owl's perspective, I mean, I think we just do anyway, but that really gave it away. When he looks at the owl at one point, is like looking at it almost as a wink. Like
I was so stupid. I had like an actual like thought hole, and I was like, oh wow, they're making Tawny Owl a real owl, huh? Like this is literally my thought process. I did not go to Philippa at all.
Different owl.
I do remember a conversation about like episode 6 or 7 or something. You're like, what's up with this owl? And I'm like, wait, cow.
I did not remember it at all. And Kate Gratinsky is mentioning in the chat that she thought the shirtless rant was kind of weird, and I agree. It
was weird.
Yeah.
It also it was such a contrast.
Jail.
They just wanted to not have. I guess they just wanted to not reveal that Philippa was the owl until the end. So but I don't know why he has to be drunk and talking to her as if she's not there. But
he can only get up the courage. Spoiler, but in the books he has a massive crush on her. So maybe he can only get up the courage when he's drunk and shaving.
I mean, obviously she's one of the most
combination, right?
She's one of the most powerful mages sorceresses for sure. I did like the impact of introducing her in episode 8 because we get 2 big reveals and them kind of she's definitely going to play a big role going forward, especially in season 3. She'll have quite a bit of screen time for sure. But I do like them not introducing her earlier. I felt like the anticipation of what's going on with this owl, that we have a skin changer or something, like, you know what I mean? I kind of like that. I did like that anticipation.
I mean, it was very creepy. It was like, you know, it kept showing up, and it was like, I don't think good things are happening when
it's like, what's going on with this owl, man? Yeah. But like, then you realize it's like, okay.
So here was something that I didn't realize the first time through. Rewatching made this clear to me, that we know who the mysterious benefactor is when Jaskier is talking about, you know, we've got benefactors helping out, you know, helping the underground here. Well, the fact that Dara shows up on the rescue ship as one of the escapees is pretty clear evidence that the benefactor is Redania, and they're doing this to get their hooks into this is part of their plan to take Cintra, is to spy on it and to send, you know, they know elven refugees are going there because the Nilfgaard is collecting elves, so that's the perfect opportunity to sneak an elf in as a spy, which is Dara. And I guess unless we had more to say about Redania, we could pivot to Michal's favorite character.
Okay, I will say, it took him kind of a long time to get to the only person we could get into Cintra is an elf.
Yeah.
But we need a spy. Thanks. An elf spy.
Yeah, I guess because he's drunk. I don't know.
I'm just imagining Philippa being like, an elf spy. An elf spy.
Yeah.
An elf spy.
One thing I do want to say before we go forward and talk about Jaskier and kind of Kaer and all of that, I do want to say, like, you know, usually when, you know, new kingdoms and new characters are introduced, it's like we already have so many compelling characters like Fringilla and Kaer, and we have Yennefer and Tris and Vet. Like, we have a lot of really good characters. But I think, like, when I first watched it, and obviously being a book reader, I was excited about it because I want to kind of see how, you know, they're gonna basically put this on screen and adapt it. But I felt like it was done so well. I was so happy, and I'm like, oh, okay, like all the stuff going forward, like, you know, we're teasing a little bit with the political stuff going forward, but shit really hits the fan. And I was like, okay, this makes me excited that they're going to be doing it properly with the way they just portrayed the Northern Kingdom. I thought it was fucking awesome.
Right on. Yeah.
So yeah, excitement from me. Now let's go to Michal, because Michal, you take it away here, because this is your, you know, you're the Michal skier of the podcast.
A little setup real quick. First, we have the set the stage for the scene. We have Nilfgaard. We have the elves roped together. It's pretty awful. We have a crier yelling, a human crier yelling, "The wild hunt walks among us. Watch for the signs." Like, yeah, we have been. There are some signs. And watching on a rewatch, there's a lot more signs because you're not necessarily looking for them all, especially not in like the first episode, but they're there. And so Yen and Kaer have run here, right? They've escaped and have arrived here. And this is when they find out about the Sandpiper in Oxenfurt, and they're going through the sewers. And so it's funny, Kyle, that you said the shit hits the fan, because here they are in the sewer, which is like a Shard of Ice, right? That's an elven. The sewer used to be an elven aqueduct, which is the same as in Shard of Ice. I appreciate that good, like, carrying over of details. So now that's set up. Michal, please take it away.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I just love the introduction, that it's like from Yennefer's point of view, and she's like, I mean, first of all, you know, it's also like, who's the Sandpiper? I'm like, oh my God, it better be. Okay.
It better be.
Because I was getting really pissed off at this point, like, that we hadn't seen him yet. I was like, guys, this is like 75% of the reason I'm here, and this is unacceptable. So I was, really glad to see, or to hear him first. And you just like hear this like wailing song, and like seeing it from her perspective as to how she like really she's happy to see him, or to hear him, and to have him be alive and in her life again for a second. And like, also the song is just so funny. Like, it is
it's Taylor Swift.
Oh my God, it is pure Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift wishes. I mean, honestly, like, it's so funny, and the way he like just Joey Beatty leans into it dramatically and is 100% singing it totally seriously.
With his emo hair and his red leather, and
yes,
yeah,
oh my god. Burn,
that's
burn,
like
burn.
Oxenfurt goth right there. I think.
It really is.
You know what's so funny about this is that, like, I don't want to call them normies, but non-book readers, like all of my non-book reader friends or like family members who watch The Witcher, they're like, oh, this was one of my favorite moments of the season because of like the Taylor Swifty songs of it, just like the whole breakup element of Jaskier and Geralt's love. Like, the people love that so much, and I'm so glad they did it like this. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no,
Michal.
it's so great, and it's so like I don't know. It's just wonderful. It's wonderful having him back in. He's like he picks up like perfectly. You know, like there's no gap in the Jaskier. It's just like he's here, he's petty, he's drinking, he's horny, he's like
We are hugging.
And it's like how he calls her witch, and it's so great.
Bard.
It's so great.
Witch. He says it, yeah. He makes it like 3 syllables.
And how his attitude changes when he realizes or remembers that Yennefer is part elf is like very moving also.
That's
like,
right. That is a good point. Yeah.
And like it doesn't change his like opinion of her, but he's like, oh, okay, you need
You're
help.
in danger. Yeah, it's not just like, what do you want? Oh, you're in danger. I'm still annoyed with you, but I don't want you to die, nor any of those who share your blood.
Yeah.
So before that, like, Kaer holds back for a minute, right? He's like standing back while they have their reunion, and he comes in and it gets introduced or what have you. And so before that and after that, some of it, I can't remember whether this happens before or after he sends them back into the sewer to make their way. But there's this great discussion about power and purpose and love, and Kaer kind of figures out that she doesn't have her power anymore because of the fire magic. And then she has this great quote. I mean, Yennefer, I think, has been the most quotable of this season, possibly. She has so many great lines, whether they're funny or meaningful.
A lot of snarky ones for sure.
Yeah, Michal, you want to read this line here from The Most Important Thing?
Sorry, I'm.
Click on my cursor. Click on my face; it'll take you to my cursor.
Really?
That's how it works in Google Docs. Yeah.
Oh, Google Docs. I was clicking on your face in Streamlabs. I don't.
Oh.
I was like, wow, that's magical. Okay, sorry. The most important thing they teach you at Aretusa isn't magic. It's to make people in power believe anything you want them to. Do anything you want them to.
Ooh, right? Like, that's a really good point. And that's part of why she got so disenfranchised with it all.
Yeah.
That's part of why she left it. Yeah.
And it's also why she can't like I really think that neither Kaer nor Fringilla compute a little bit for Yen, because she's like she can't believe in someone believing that much.
Good point. Yeah, she's too cynical to understand true faith. And she's right that even these true faith people have, there's some cracks in that. Like, what is the line? Everyone answers to someone eventually. Even you, I suspect. It's like So that's really good. That applies both ways. Like, it's true for Yennefer. Even she has someone she answers to eventually, and even whether it's Ciri or Geralt or herself or Tisea or the Deathless Mother behind all this, someone who's holding power over her, or like in Kaer's case, their faith is in a person. Right there, like, do they really know what the deal with M here is? Like, is he really all they think he is? Is he really a worthy of their faith? Or, like, I'm gonna suggest no, he's not. But make your own call.
Yeah, make your own call, Michal.
I have no illusions when it comes to Emir. I have pretty strong feelings, as I think you know.
And back to what you were saying about Yennefer and Jaskier bonding and coming back together, like her loss of magic is something that he really can jive with as well. Like, obviously he doesn't have magic, but he's like, what if I lose my musical ability? What if like my hand is broken or I lose my voice? And he doesn't say that. He says, I'm scared the muses will stop speaking to me. But same difference. Like if he loses the ability to
be
beguile
creative,
people, if he loses his creativity. Yeah, like that's a lot of artists struggle with that.
Yeah. I will admit that his line about I'm helping because first they came for the elves and eventually they'll come for the artists. I was a little bit like, I'm slightly less than moved by that logic, but okay.
Yeah. Art is a bit
really...
more persecuted in their world, but still I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still not like, it's nothing like a race or a culture.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did really like that conversation on the boat because it felt, I don't know, I almost wonder if it's like foreshadowing if they like would do something horrible to him that doesn't happen in the books. But yeah.
Ooh, what do you mean?
I don't know, like cut off his hand or something so he can't play the lute or
no, don't do that. Yeah. So speaking of stuff from the books, there's we don't get the Bleoberis scene that I mentioned in the last episode, but we do get it referred to. Jaskier refers to being at the seat of friendship when it was raided. And that's what kicks off this discussion of them coming for everyone, because they're coming for even for the seat of friendship, and and then for that, and where everyone's supposed to be welcome. So that's like it's a holy spot, right, where your race, your creed, your beliefs aren't supposed to matter. It's supposed to be like neutral ground. The Druids have been taking care of it forever. It's the oldest tree on the continent, according to them. May or may not actually be true. It doesn't matter, because it's the symbology of it that really matters. The creed of the place matters more than whether that detail is actually true. But so it's too bad we didn't get to see that, but I'm glad it was referred to. And apparently that's where Rians has been tracking him ever since that scene. And that is true for book and show. So that's kind of a nice little carryover. How about the elf guy? It's a bummer that elf was killed, huh?
I really hated that.
Yeah, he was.
You seem like a good person, right? Like just like it's a really bad thing happened,
and especially like at the beginning, he's like the deaf elf is like, "I won't leave you." Like when he thinks that Kaer and Yennefer are dangerous, and then he just
out.
He gets tossed out like the trash.
Zoogle got him. Yeah. And then his friend had his redeeming moment. Like Yennefer calls out, like, you ran away. That guy needed your help. And then the dude sacrifices himself to help everybody else get on the ship. So he had his redemptive moment. What's that?
That was just as sad, in my opinion.
Oh, it was very sad and very, very brutal.
And it showed the xenophobia and racism elements we've been talking about, and how the elves have literally been kicked into the ground like this elf was, like it's fucking sad.
And I thought it was as sad as it was very much a Witcher vibe thing to do, because we've talked a lot about in the short stories how Sapkowski goes from silly to sad on a turn of a dime, and that scene was exactly that. Because Jaskier's conversation with that guard was hilarious, right? He's like, well, actually, that one song of yours I'm not a big fan of. Like, who does that? Who like insult? Like, actually, people do that. They go up to their favorite artist and like insult their choices about, like, I wouldn't have written that song that way. And Jaskier's like, he's one of these guys. Like, am I really gonna? I really should keep my mouth shut, but I just can't do it. Like, okay, you talentless, rah, 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 And it's
well, it's also about season 1, so it's like hilarious. Like, I don't have all the lyrics, but like, he's like over all the lines, but he's like, it took me until the 4th stanza to realize there were different timelines. Like, I wonder what that's referencing. That's awesome. It was, I laughed so hard.
Yeah, you're right. That was It was so meta. It was really funny to say. It took me until the 4th verse to understand there were different timelines. Which is like, I was like, yep, they're making fun of themselves.
I'm imagining Lauren has
was really funny.
Oh, so you guys didn't like it, huh? Okay.
Well, I can have a sense of humor about it.
Well, I don't know, because then Jaskier really goes in on the guy.
And then Gregor in the chat says Jaskier's responsible for that death. It's like, kind of is. Like he he didn't necessarily see that coming. I'm not sure he could see that coming, but he definitely screwed the operation up by
Yeah, he made
not
it
being able to-
necessary, but
Yeah.
Jaskier wouldn't do that kind of thing intentionally, though. He's not that.
no,
kind
no,
of person.
no, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
But I mean,
Yeah.
it's a good point. Like in times like these, like Jaskier is obviously doing good things by being the Sandpiper, but like it might take a little more seriousness than he's necessarily attributing to it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good motivation going forward if you think about it, because shit does get serious. It's like, oh, okay, like,
Yeah.
it's like after this, it's like we gotta really get our shit together, even though Jaskier's. Jaskier. I'm just gonna say Jaskier is Jaskier because he's a one of a kind.
So I have a much bigger list of funny moments here, but
Yeah.
a few remaining not funny things before we get to that. For example, a really overpowering theme for this episode is creating a future for things that are dying out, whether it's trying to make more Witchers, or it's trying to reestablish elves as an entire culture, or just this one elf talking about trying to make a family, getting a wife and a family and doing a farm, like the deaf elf guy, or whether it's the elder blood that's dead and is trying to restore itself. Heck, even the Wild Hunt is trying to get back in the game. So they're kind of they're on the way out. They're trying to stay relevant or what have you. So and so there's a lot of that going on. It's a nice unifying theme throughout all these different plot lines, and you could even argue that that's happening with Redania. Cintra's they're trying to make Cintra a thing again, but for their own devices, but it is trying to restore something that was destroyed. So that is, and trying to, Jaskier's, like lamenting the loss of his relationship with Geralt is a little less serious but he feels it deeply. So there is that, it's a little smaller scale, but it's something. There's a couple of really, really obscure, sneaky lines. You know how I've made a couple of references to the rats, rats around Kaer Morhen. Lambert actually says, "Come on, you little rat," to Ciri at one point in this episode. It's just like as a side comment, like, "Oh," I think it was Lambert anyway. It was one of the Witchers says, "Come on, you little rat." Like, aha, what are you saying there? And I refer to that creature as a Zoogle. It's not actually explicit, but it's got to be the Zoogle, like Shard of Ice. It's the sewer monster. It's got the tentacles and all that. So,
I mean, I sent you the link on Instagram the other day, and that thing was confirmed to be a Chernobog. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, that one thing. Yeah, that flying monster, which I guess is in the next episode or sixth episode. I don't remember. But yeah, we'll have to look that one up. I'll do some research on what that thing is. I never heard of that before. Chernobog. I never even heard of that before.
but it is cool that we do. I mean, the Zoogle is absolutely hideous.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. So the line "perhaps something more" was in this episode too. So another short story title reference there. So I don't have any more points except for the funny stuff, which I said there's a good bit. So I want to make sure y'all aren't.
Rience. The Rience was like we find out that he was actually there.
Yeah, he was. He's the one who chased away. Like I don't think he was stalking Jaskier there. Yeah, so we find out that later, but it's apparently good. It's good to know here. Good to point that out here because
we find out later it's more insightful. Then we're like, that makes sense.
Because it's the next episode where it's introduced that he was let out of jail, and then it's kind of it's a flashback to now, which is a good setup. Actually, there is one other thing we need to talk about here, which sets up the Geralt portaling in to Istrid's location, whereas in the next episode we see a few minutes before Geralt portals in, we see it from Istrid's perspective, where he's looking around, he's getting frustrated, he's like, what does all this mean? And then he like throws the book at the statue and is like, wait, don't knock the statue over. That's a statue of King Rogner. That's Ciri's granddad. So I think that's Ebbing that they're in, because he was the king of Ebbing. So like that's the one place that would make sense for his statue to be. And so it's kind of funny that he just portals in, and Geralt needs a minute. He's like, who the hell are you? It's just invading, and he's like, hang on, bro, give me a sec.
And then he's like, portals are no fun, man.
Yeah, portals are no fun.
I mean, who like imagine kind of what going through a portal would be like, you know, getting sick after one. I don't know. It's like Michal, can you imagine what going through a portal would be like?
I mean, I'm a creative person, but I don't necessarily need to go there.
Gregor in the chat says it's confirmed that it's a Zoogle, and Kate Bertinsky says that library is everything.
Yeah,
yes.
It's a very cool library. I really do like how Ciri's like she tells them the problem about, you know, the monoliths, and Geralt like instantly goes into dad I fix mode, you know, like
it's so we know that the interaction between Istrid and Geralt is going to be awkward too, so it's like this setup. It's like when we first see them interacting, it's like we know they're going to get along because they're going to be bros, you know what I mean? They're going to be bros, but it's like but at the same time it's like once they actually have a conversation, which we find out later, it's like going to be really awkward. You know, Yennefer, you know what I mean? So it's like Yen. So
yeah, that is so good. I love that. I corrects him. It's so good.
I love how they have like no fucking idea. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay. It's like
I'm looking forward to watching that again.
It's gonna pop off.
So other funny moment. That's a really funny one. Yeah. Then we have back at Kaer Morhen, we have Lambert says, haven't even had me fill of grog yet, and already the women are doubling. And then she says, Lambert, and he says, Marigold. And she says, I see your wounds have improved, but your manners have not. Yeah. It's like, yep, they know each other. And she says, I assume you'll all want to wash up as well when they're getting ready for dinner, and they're just kind of like, yeah, we don't do that. You know?
Well, that's actually really funny since, like, well, first of all, I do have to say, as much as Yen and Kaer claim to stink, they look pretty fine to me. They like their cloaks are barely dirty, like especially Yennefer. She was like fully under the sewage water, and she's pretty fine.
Well, you know what it is. You know what it is. It's like, you know, when they do all the like the costuming and stuff. It's like, okay, they're in a different scene. It's like they make them all nice for the next scene. That's what I kind of noticed. I'm like, why do they have chunks of poo everywhere?
Yeah, you look pretty much the same level of dirty as most people in this town. So okay. But
have you read that thing about Henry Cavill and not being dirty enough?
No.
There's a couple articles about how he would roll around in the dirt because they would bring him his costume and he'd be like, guys, this isn't dirty enough. He'd be like, they'd bring it me nicely pressed and neat with like a little dust on top because they needed to dust it up. And he's like, guys, this needs to be a lot dirtier. And then he would say they would be horrified at how he would dirty himself up more. And I think we all appreciate that. It's like, yeah, he should be like lived in and not like pristine. Like,
yeah. He's been in the shit.
Yeah. And this episode in particular, because it's the Shard of Ice episode, right? And that's the one where in the books he like literally has to get into the sewer, and then Yennefer's like, you need a bath, and she gives him a bath, like summons the bath and then throws the water out the window, right? And it hits somebody, and she's like,
well, interestingly enough, she doesn't heat the water, right?
And she doesn't heat the water. Oh, you're right. She doesn't heat the water in the last one either. Oh my God, I didn't catch that reference. Nice. Very good catch. Very good.
I also just want to point out that when Jaskier says that they smell like something has crawled up their ass and died, Kaer looks at Yennefer and very noticeably sniffs.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like the only funny thing he does in the entire show, but it's really funny.
Actually, there's one other funny thing I think he said. Actually, maybe this wasn't his line, but Yennefer gets so mad when the elf gets killed. They're out in this plaza and she yells, "What's the point?" And Kaer goes, "Of screaming?" And she goes, "Of anything." But I think it might have been Jaskier that said "of screaming," but I think it might have been Kaer because it was funnier that Kaer said it, because he's like, dude, we're still trying to be sneaky here. It's like, what's the point of screaming when we're like sneaking around in the sewers? Nah.
There's a really good mix of funny and serious in these episodes, huh?
Yeah,
really
Yeah.
like deep things to think about, and then it's just like these super silly things that happen. It's like shit.
yeah. There's the line, I miss the days when my biggest problem was an ever-present sing-songy twit.
Oh my god. The two of them are just like so like the quips just start flowing like water. It's amazing.
I think it's part of why they wanted Yennefer or Anya Chalotra to interact with more people, whereas in the book she spends a bit more time off screen, off page doing things, because everyone they pair with Anya Chalotra has great banter. And you got to think part of that is her, is her acting, her skills.
She's really funny.
Whether it's with Kaer, whether it's with Jaskier, whether it's with Tisea, Vilgafortz, Stragabor, whether it's just exclaiming to the void, like, what's the point? Or, what's with all these men sneaking around? It's just
her sense of humor is very sarcastic. Like we all see all sorts of different senses of humor in the show, but like her sense of humor is like the number one sarcastic sense of humor. Like
she might be the only
queen.
drier person than Geralt.
Yes.
Which is why they're perfect for each other.
Yeah, which is, I think they even maybe tried to extend that difference a little bit by having Triss be even like nicer and friendlier, and having Yennefer be even more cynical and sarcastic. To just
Triss is so soft spoken and like lovely.
Triss is a lot friendlier and like cares about how people, she's like, use your words more carefully, don't be such
and Yennefer is just like F-bombs and
Yennefer just says
ball of spikes.
Yeah, she doesn't pull punches. Speaking of Triss, when Ciri and Ciri's look on her face when Geralt and Triss meet when they see each other for the first time, she's like, you two know each other. And it might be more than know each other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I actually thought we would get a little more history there, but they didn't go into it.
They dialed it back a little, huh? Yeah.
Well, one thing I am curious about, and this is a big topic, so we don't have to talk about it now, but like, Yennefer and Geralt are destined and super in love with each other and all that, but in the books they are not sexually exclusive at all.
No,
so like,
they are not.
I wonder how they'll deal with that in the show, if they will deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like they kind of could have had an opportunity. I mean, Geralt definitely doesn't take Triss up on her offer to be, you know what I'm saying? So I think,
and that's when he thinks Yen is dead. So
exactly. It's a bigger deal, because he's like, I'm single, but I still don't want to do it,
Yeah. So I think I think that obviously things are a little bit more rocky at the end of the season, and he's, forgiven her a little bit more, but I don't think there's going to be many more opportunities where he'll do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think they'll make that less of a thing in the show, if that makes sense. Like, we do know, like, without spoiling too much, we will see her gang apart at some point again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It feels like they're going to keep them more mutually exclusive. In the show,
they might be. Yeah.
Because I mean, if you look, I mean, like they're just Henry Cavill and Chalotra. They're both beautiful human beings. Geralt and Yennefer, both iconic characters. It'll be interesting to see how they do it, though.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of romance, I do have to point out that Yennefer says something to like, did Geralt leave a bad taste in your mouth to Jaskier? And he's like, no one leaves a taste in my mouth.
No one leaves a taste in my mouth.
Hello, it is I, Jaskier, the extremely straight bard.
Who wrote a breakup song about my platonic friend.
Friend, yeah.
That's
really like the historians, they were just good friends.
Yes, it's totally the historian. They were just good friends. The two women moved away to live together as friends. Yes, that's it. To live in a community where only other women as friends live. Yes, but they're all just friends. Yes.
I think that was the funniest line for me personally.
No one leaves a taste in my mouth. That is such a good line.
I was like, okay, they're really going for it here.
They clearly get it too. They're like,
yeah,
we know what we're doing with this line.
Oh yeah. And Joey B, again, he just relishes every line. It's so great.
He does, yeah. He
really and the way he does it too, it's like Jaskier. It's like this kind of like nonchalantly, like, but then he's kind of like, oh, what I said was kind of more nonchalant than the nonchalantness that I am. It's like, it's so ironic and funny.
All right.
So yeah, did we have any more funny moments or anything that we kind of wanted to go over?
I think I said everything I had notated.
I got what I got. Yeah.
Another couple of excellent episodes. I think that, we're only on episodes 3 and 4 here, but like I said, What Is Lost and Redanian Intelligence definitely tackled some big things. And I felt like, not that season 1 didn't have as big of emotional impacts, but like it's like all these episodes are hard hit. They have like serious, really big serious elements, and I feel like that only starts to build more and more as the series goes on. Like
Yeah,
that more and more intense, and it's like
the passage
really,
of time makes a big difference. Like these relationships have existed for longer. They have more meaning. That gives them more authenticity, right? Like you barely knew these characters in season 1. Their relationships you can understand them, but the longer they go, the more ups and downs they have, the more solid they, the way they keep coming back to each other. It just that makes them more powerful. So it's just like any show where you start season 1, the characters you don't fully know them. The more seasons that go past, the more you jive with them, the more you know them, the more they are part of you as just, as watchers or
characters
readers.
change.
Yeah. And you see them in a variety of situations. You trust them more. You kind of understand their behavior. You can predict what they're going to do. And as far as the show goes too, they get to do more things like inside jokes, like meta humor, like we're seeing here, like with No One Leaves a Taste in My Mouth. Like that's just funny anyway, but there's levels to it. There's layers to it. And that's part of the, like, knowing the characters well, those jokes are more meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, even going to Burn Butcher Burn, like, I agree it's not as catchy as Toss a Coin, but I think it's a better song. And Jaskier's grown. Like, that makes sense,
I kind of agree. It is more mature. I don't think it's going to be as viral as Toss a Coin, but I think you're right. I think it is maybe a more musical. More.
It's harder to cover
emotional.
because it's so like Jaskier singing it, but it's I really like it. It's in my music list.
I think we're gonna have a banger each season that kind of focuses on an element of the past of you know what I mean? Like the first season, we kind of had a song that was about the first season, and the second season we have a song that's about like, oh, you know what I mean? The kind of the longing of Jaskier. Like I think we're gonna kind of have a song like that each season that kind of speaks to kind of where we are with the story, and that's what a bard is about, right? A bard is a storyteller. So I think that having a character like Jaskier and an ultra talented artist, I'm just going to say artist because Joey Beatty plays instruments and plays the lute and sings and does all of these things.
Since he legitimately sang and played that, you're right. You got to give him some credit for that for sure. The dude's got skills, and you're right, absolutely right about the song thing, because Skotsky loves to play with storytelling. He loves to present different versions of storytelling to show whether fairy tales, fireside tales, history. All these different versions. Songs are a huge part of that. History, like songs are remembered. Songs are a thing that survive.
He literally sings tales about Geralt's adventures. I mean,
you're totally right. I mean, the Butcher of Blaviken, like that was a season. Episode 2 is like, I'm going to write a song that will help restore your reputation, bro. With this lute I got from Phil Evandrel.
I wouldn't be surprised if the last scene of The Witcher series is Jaskier singing some sort of song about their adventures.
That. That'd be great.
And I'm going to leave you with that thought, Chad. That's where we're going to end it here today. We're going to do our little outro here. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Of course, if you do want to listen to our podcast, you can check out our podcast, anchor.fm. We just uploaded the episodes 1 and 2 versions of our pod up on there. We also have our Nightmare of the Wolf. So we got 3 new episodes up there, Aziz, for people to go check out.
Yeah, it's I've lost track of how many there are, because there's more episodes on the pod feed than on the video feed because
now.
Because we've moved some things around. I can check give me 2 seconds and I can tell you. But in the meantime, while I'm looking that up, let me also shout out our supporters. We have Morhen, we have Rhett C, we have Cato Vivas, we have James G, we have Ryan B, School of the Cat, we have Barry Samuel W, we have Lucas M, we have Robert B, we have LC, and we have Amy Blackfire. Thank you very much, y'all. We appreciate it. We'll keep them coming. As you know, once we are done with our season 2 coverage, we'll get into Blood of Elves.
Blood of Elves. And also, we are going to be doing an awards show. Got some planning for that, and I'll have to talk with my compatriots here about how we're going to do that. But I think we're going to have a really, really fun show with some LVPs, least value, like we'll have some funny categories, and it'll be really fun.
Okay, so the count is, if you don't count our trailer episode, which is the 6-minute intro episode, I don't count that. That's just hey, we're the podcast of Surprise. This would be episode 21. So you nailed it. So there's 20 on the feed. This will be 21, 22 if you count that feeder episode. But like I said, I don't. So.
Somehow they have endured me for this long. But Chad, we really, really appreciate you coming in here. Of course, if you want to go check out these lovely people, description of the video, History of Westeros, all of his contacts are in there, and Michal, all of her stuff is in there as well. We'll quickly go to Michal. What's next for you? What's going on with you?
So you can find me ranting on Twitter at Ink as Rain, and you can find some of my other podcasts at the Nice Jewish Fangirls podcast, the Vassals of Kingsgrave podcast, and the Level 7 Access podcast.
Twitter, Ink as Rain. Check out Michal. And also Aziz.
Well, I tend
to monoliths.
Yeah, monorail. But I tend to enjoy your rants, Michal. So I agree. I agree with following you. I am History of Westeros on Twitter, and we also have Pod Suprise, a Twitter account for our show here. It's not super active, but we're getting it there. We do post announcements there and interact with people. So yeah, we're still doing Valar Readus for the Winds of Winter. The World of Ice and Fire. Pardon me, over on History of Westeros. That's been fun. We're getting really deep into not just the influences on A Song of Ice and Fire, but the influences on George R. R. Martin. That's super fun, dealing with meta and all the books that he read as a kid and stuff like that. So that's really, really good times. We'll eventually do that kind of analysis on Sapkowski, although we kind of do it going through as well with our lore and our exploration of fairy tale history and things like that. So you know how we do.
Oh yeah. History of Westeros on Twitter, Facebook, and also YouTube. Also Podcast of Surprise on Facebook. If you want to come join our community, come hang out with us there. We do memes. We do all sorts of announcements there. We do fun threads. We usually do a couple of different threads before we're going to be doing a podcast, and that's where you can come join our community and come chat with us and hang out. And for me, I'm not sure I'm still dealing with a lot, so I'll update you guys as much as I can. I'm pretty much almost settled into my new place. Just got a couple things going on here, and you will see hopefully more active Kyle soon. But hey, we're here. We got this podcast done, and I feel like that's an accomplishment. So
indeed.
Thumbs up to everyone. Had a lot of fun tonight. Thank you so much, everyone. For joining us. And we shall have episodes. Would it be 5 and 6 next time? Which is really exciting. Start to get and then we'll have one more episode after that, 7 and 8, and then we'll have an awards ceremony. And we hope to see you for the next episodes of the podcast of Surprise. Thank you so much, everyone. Cool. Enjoy your evening wherever you are, or morning. Thank you for the people who came over from Europe to come chill with us as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.